Our saga begins with a vampire who met a truly pathetic end. Yet, as mockery echoed in his ears during his final breath, fate intervened to send him back to the past. Now armed with the ultimate weapon knowledge of the future, he vows to seize absolute power and forge a new legend. But how will a weakling defy the laws of the world, and what nightmares await him? Let's dive into the abyss of today's story. The scene opens amidst a catastrophic thunderstorm. A holy knight emerges from the shadows, sneering at his prey. He asks the trembling vampire if he enjoyed cowering in fear for the last half year. The knight steps forward, his aura overwhelming the vampire as he accuses him of the ultimate crimes. He calls him a filthy, wretched monster responsible for countless deaths, mocking him for thinking he could ever outsmart the holy knights. With eyes burning like cold fire, the knight declares that the monster's story ends tonight. From this moment on, even God will turn his back on such a sinner. Steel sings as the knight draws his blade. He commands the vampire to feel honored, for he is about to be purified by the legendary vampire slayer. The vampire collapses, blood staining the earth. The knight stands over him, preaching that his twisted, broken form is simply physical proof of his corrupted soul. He condemns the vampire's deception of the church and his foolish refusal to accept their divine judgment. Then, with a hysterical, manic laugh, the knight drops a bombshell. The truth is, he didn't fail to catch him all this time he was waiting. He had intentionally delayed the hunt, allowing the vampire to spread chaos and flee. All part of a sick game. Why? Because he wanted to savor the kill. He wanted the elimination of a resurfaced vampire to be a grand, elegant spectacle, a bloody warning to all non-believers. In that frozen second, staring at the cold steel of his executioner, the vampire has a devastating realization. He understands now that this world is not governed by justice, but by the brutal law of the jungle. The strong survive, and the weak perish. Power is the only truth that matters. The blade slices down, cutting through the body of the vampire who learned this lesson too late. As pain explodes through his nervous system, his final thought is a bitter question: was his entire strategy of running away a mistake from the start? The knight continues to spit insults at the corpse, calling his very existence a stain on the church's honor and a mockery of the light. As the light fades from his eyes, the vampire stretches a trembling hand toward the dark sky. His heart screams with regret, begging the heavens for just one more chance. Then, amidst the victorious laughter of his killer, he falls into the void. Suddenly, the vampire gasps, lungs dragging in air as he wakes up in a cold sweat inside a familiar tent. Panic surges as he frantically checks his neck and limbs. They are whole. The devastating wounds from his death are nowhere to be found. He stares at his hands, wrapped in old bandages. Disbelief washes over him. He tells himself this is impossible. He should be a corpse rotting in the mud. Looking around, the fog of confusion lifts. This isn't a dream. He is sitting in his old sanctuary. The tent he occupied before the holy knights began their purge. His eyes lock onto the crude calendar carved into the wood. The shock hits him like a truck he has traveled back 6 months, right before the hunting squad was dispatched. He stands there, paralyzed in the center of the tent, his mind racing. Has he truly defied death and returned to the starting line? He clenches his fist until the knuckles turn white. This is real, a second chance at life that he cannot afford to squander. The scene shifts to the ominous forest near Broadwin Village. This is where Eugene spent his days as a shadow, a weak, pathetic vampire holding his breath, just trying to survive one more day in a world of humans. He never craved human blood, but one moment of weakness, one slip of instinct long ago, marked the beginning of his tragic end. That single mistake summoned mercenaries the next day, and 5 days later, the holy knights arrived to scourge the village. For a month, they hunted him. For a year, they chased him. No matter how deep he buried himself, they always found him. For 12 agonizing years, he lived in terror, surviving on the blood of forest animals like a scavenger. He doesn't know the logic behind his time travel, but his resolve hardens into steel. Eugene runs, swearing that if he dies again, it won't be as a coward. He must evolve. He must become a monster strong enough to crush them, even if they track him down. Under the eerie glow of the green moonlight, he abandons his passive survival. It is time to awaken the ancient vampire magic. Eugene recalls the absolute law of his kind: vampires absorb power through blood. The stronger the prey, the greater the power gained. Suddenly, the hairs on his neck stand up. A killing intent pierces the air of the dark forest. The water explodes. The Forest Lord, a massive beast with jaws capable of crushing bone, charges straight for Eugene. Eugene freezes in shock, barely managing to throw his body out of the way. He realizes bitterly that his current body is sluggish and weak, but he calculates his move. He doesn't need to kill it. He only needs to inflict a single cut. Just one drop of its potent blood will be enough to jumpstart his evolution. Eugene launches himself into the air. He abandons the stealth of his past life for a reckless, all-out attack. His old methods led only to death. There is no room for hesitation in this new life. Screaming with effort, he swings his sword with everything he has, but reality is cruel. The blade shatters against the monster's iron hide, and a massive tail slams into him. Eugene is sent flying through the air like a broken doll. He slams into the dark water with a bone-shattering impact, crimson blood staining the surface. As the beast lunges again, a terrifying thought strikes him. He drastically underestimated this wanderer. Wanderers, nightmares of the wild that refuse to stay within the demonic zones. Some of these monstrosities hoard magic stones even in safe lands, treasures far more valuable than any gemstone known to man. Eugene knows the truth, claiming that magic stone could change his destiny forever. However, the gap in raw power is absolute. Another crushing blow lands, and Eugene is forced to admit his fatal mistake. He got greedy. This Forest Lord possesses the strength to snuff out his life before he can even land a single scratch. The jaws of death clamp around him. Eugene's mind races. Did he foolishly believe fate would offer him a third chance if he failed here? No, he rejects that weakness instantly. He is not arrogant enough to bank on a miracle. As he slides down the monster's gullet, bitter memories flash before his eyes. A past life spent crawling in the dirt, holding his breath, struggling just to survive another day. His eyes suddenly burn with a crimson light. No more running. This time, he chooses to fight for his life. Radiant mana symbols erupt across his skin. A silent scream tears through his soul, forcing his broken body to move, to win. His physiology mutates, muscles swelling with explosive power. He knows with absolute certainty there is no next time. It ends here. From the abyss of the monster's stomach, Eugene begins to tear through its entrails. He clings to one brutal truth: defeat is death, so he must seize victory with his own two hands. With savage desperation, he strikes directly at the monster's core, the magic stone. The beast explodes from the inside out. A rain of blood scatters into the air as Eugene emerges, proving that survival belongs only to those willing to bathe in the blood of their enemies. Standing amidst the gory remains, Eugene recalls the oath he swore to his soul. If given a second life, he would never flee again. He would fight. Under the pale moonlight, Eugene rises in his ascended form. His long hair dances in the wind as he stands victorious, a conqueror claiming his bloody prize. Silence returns to the night. He stands alone. Realizing he didn't just bathe in the Forest Lord's blood, he devoured its magic stone, absorbing energy beyond his wildest dreams. Eugene looks down at the floating carcass of the fallen lord. The mana crystal left behind is unique, pulsating with a strange color and size. He realizes the implication immediately. The ability granted by this rare crystal offers a terrifying potential, the power to harden his skin into impenetrable black scales. His mind works quickly. With these scales, if he can completely shield himself from the sun, he might finally be able to walk freely during the day. Memories of the past timeline surface. Mercenary rumors had spoken of this legendary forest lord. The swamps were once small, but seasonal floods expanded the domain, inviting this predator to feast on unfortunate humans. In that chaos, Eugene had managed to steal a sip of the wounded monster's blood and escape over the corpses of mercenaries. He knew the potency of that power, and he returned to claim it all. Yet, even with this explosive growth, Eugene remains calculated. It is still not enough to face the Holy Knight, young Dirt. He must avoid any battle he cannot win with 100% certainty. That knight is a calamity who can track the undead across the earth. Hiding is futile. The only option is to amass enough power to crush him head on. The horizon begins to brighten. The sun is coming. He decides to retreat before the dawn breaks. Testing the crystal's full power will have to wait. Suddenly, a slow, sarcastic clapping breaks the silence. A voice mocks the dead fake lord who turned a paradise into a swamp, celebrating its demise. The voice thanks Eugene for slaughtering the pathetic beast. The water around him begins to ripple with an unnatural will, but the tone shifts. The mysterious entity demands a price. Eugene has polluted these sacred waters with filthy blood, and he must pay. A water fairy materializes from the mist. She introduces herself as Moran, the guardian of the lake. She claims this domain as her own. She threatens Eugene with the full wrath of the forest, vowing to tear him apart and curse his very soul. Eugene ignores her theatrical speech entirely. He simply stares coldly and asks a single question. Who are you? He didn't hear a word of her grand entrance. Spirit sensing is a rare talent, one he does not yet possess. Moran freezes, her dramatic pose crumbling into confusion at his serious question. She realizes he can see her, but can't hear spirits. She sheepishly asks if he heard her call him a bald vampire earlier. Flustered, she reintroduces herself properly. Moran, a water spirit, the former mistress of this lake before that crocodile enslaved her 15 years ago. She tries to save face, claiming she was a strategic partner who lured food for the monster, but she quickly drops the act, sincerely thanking Eugene for ending her nightmare. Moran gazes at him with admiration, praising his brilliance. She believes his previous form, the bald old man, was a masterclass in disguise to lower the monster's guard. Meanwhile, Eugene notices a single tattoo on his body has silently faded away. Miriam gazed at the ink on his skin, her voice filled with awe as she asked the meaning of the dark markings. Were they ancient warrior symbols, or perhaps the names of fallen victims? Eugene's reply was cold and detached. He simply did not know. He explained that he had been a vampire since his very first breath, yet his origin remained a void. Save for the presence of 10 mysterious tattoos, with no memories of his early existence, he had been content to drift through a quiet life, never questioning the nature of his own being. Eugene pondered if the marks were actually seals waiting to unlock his destiny, but shook off the thought and decided to depart, commanding Miriam to stand guard over the forest. The command left her stunned, hurt that he would leave so abruptly after finding a companion. She chased after him, whining about the crushing boredom of her solitude, begging him to stay and help purify the swamp, a task that would span an eternity. Desperate, she offered him a gift fit for a pale, handsome noble, the purest water in the realm. Fairy water is a delicacy, she declared. Before spitting the liquid directly from her mouth, Eugene stared at her in absolute disgust and ordered her to back away. Yet Miriam was relentless, chasing his shadow and offering to purify liquid, or create more in increasingly grotesque ways, crying out for Mr. Nightwalker to wait. Days later, darkness descended upon the village of Broadwin. Chaos erupted. A villager scrambled to the chief's home, screaming that the dreaded red-eyed monster had returned. The townsfolk huddled together, paralyzed by terror, only to realize that the attack was something else entirely. Before them lay a mountain of fresh game. They stared in bewilderment at the feast, wondering if they could possibly consume such a staggering amount of meat. Confusion rippled through the crowd. What went on in the mind of the red-eyed beast? He usually paid this tribute only once every 2 weeks. But the time for his visit had not yet arrived. For 10 years, this creature had lurked at the foot of the mountain, a silent ghost that never threatened the villagers' lives. The chief could not fathom the monster's intent, yet when Eugene requested entry, the old man nervously agreed, fearing to refuse. A decade ago, his first appearance had struck fear into the very soul of the village. But over time, his diligent payment of taxes in the form of hunted beasts created a silent truce. They ignored him, and he left them in peace. The chief stammered, offering a shaky welcome to the guest who had been a phantom for so long. A collective gasp swept through the crowd as Eugene finally removed his mask to reveal his face. With a smile that could melt winter, he announced that after years of isolation, he had recovered from his illness and came to share the joy. Eugene bowed with grace, expressing deep gratitude for the village's unwitting support, his desire to repay them shining in his eyes. As the villagers stood frozen in astonishment, he urged them to call upon his strength whenever darkness threatened their homes, or should misfortune strike, he would be their shield. With a charming smile, he turned and vanished into a blinding aura of light, leaving them spellbound. Whispers began to spread among the villagers like wildfire. Was the forest monster actually a half-elf, or perhaps an exiled noble behind the mask? They never imagined such breathtaking beauty existed. On the return journey, Miriam the fairy buzzed around Eugene, her confusion evident. Why surrender such a bounty to mere humans? What grand scheme was he plotting? Eugene strode through the forest, explaining that while vampires reek of blood and death, a handsome face is the ultimate proof of goodwill in the human world. Miriam protested loudly. Was he planning to befriend the cattle instead of feasting on them? He had sworn to leave in a few days, so entangling his fate with theirs seemed utterly pointless. Eugene halted, admitting to the silence that he had been naive. He could not sever his ties to this place, nor could he stand by and watch the coming storm. Miriam froze as Eugene revealed a prophecy that chilled the air. Ruthless mercenaries would soon descend upon the village, destined to slaughter every last soul. Their mission was to capture a single boy and drag him before the tyrant lord, Sir Terwin. To bury the truth, they would leave no witnesses alive. Eugene knew this massacre would inevitably summon the holy knights to his doorstep. To protect his own peace, he had to shatter this destiny. Miriam scoffed, doubting mercenaries would go to such extremes. While Eugene remained an enigma, Miriam realized that, despite their time together, the depths of his mind were a labyrinth she could not navigate. Eugene's voice turned grim. She would soon see with her own eyes whether his words were truth or madness. His first move was to win the villagers' hearts, a strategy that baffled the fairy. How did trust connect to the coming bloodshed? Suddenly, Eugene stopped dead in his tracks. Thud. Miriam crashed into his back, whining about the abrupt halt. But Eugene's gaze was fixed ahead. A squad of armed men emerged from the shadows, demanding to know who dared block their path. The mercenaries sneered, seeing only a helpless villager, completely unaware they stood before a predator. His humble attire completely throws off their ambush calculations. One bandit scoffs at Eugene's unnatural beauty, dismissing him as a defenseless pretty boy who needs to be silenced before he can scream. A mercenary lunges from the shadows, a massive axe raised high to cleave him in two. Moran shrieks a warning, but Eugene is already channeling the dormant power within his veins. A crimson iris glows in the abyss. Eugene vanishes into a blur of speed, delivering a slash so precise it paints the ground with fresh blood. Time seems to slow as Eugene remembers his crucial strategy sessions with the fairy Moran, recalling that earning the villagers' absolute trust is the only way to survive without suspicion. Moran gasps, unable to process how he annihilated a trained killer with a single, casual motion. Drenched in gore, Eugene stands like a reaper, calmly announcing that not a single soul will leave this forest alive. Terror seizes the mercenaries' hearts as they witness his unholy speed, and a terrified scream pierces the air. He's not human, it's a vampire. The leader tries to quell the panic, shouting that a vampire is a walking jackpot if captured. The church will pay a fortune for him alive, he roars, swinging a colossal greatsword with bone-crushing force. But the bandit freezes in horror. Eugene has stopped the heavy blade with his bare hand, gripping the steel like it is paper. In a flash, Eugene slips past the defense, delivering a fatal strike that ends the leader instantly. Realizing capture is impossible, the remaining mercenaries switch tactics. They must kill the monster to survive. Blades rain down from every angle, one desperate foe aiming to sever Eugene's head, but he dances through the steel like a phantom, tearing them apart one by one until they start calling him a demon in human skin. A towering brute steps forward, swinging a spiked mace capable of pulverizing boulders. Eugene catches the weapon mid-swing, the impact shockwave stunning the giant into silence. He glances up. The sun has dipped below the horizon, signaling the start of his true reign. Shattering the weapon, he crushes the brute effortlessly, declaring that the night belongs to him alone. Surrounded by a sea of corpses, Eugene calculates his next move. He must stage the scene perfectly. The survivors' courage shatters completely, and they huddle together, screaming that this monster cannot be faced individually. Moments later, the village chief and a mob arrive with torches, their faces twisting in sheer horror. The chief stares at the carnage, voice trembling as he asks how such a massacre is even possible. As a villager retches from the stench of blood, the chief turns a suspicious eye to Eugene, demanding to know if he caused this brutality. Eugene denies it with ice-cold composure, lying that he stumbled upon the slaughter while checking traps. He gestures to the bodies, explaining the bandits were ambushed before raiding the village, then points to the true culprits. A collective gasp ripples through the crowd as they spot the carcasses of massive black wolves scattered among the dead. Eugene weaves a masterclass of deceit, claiming a pack of beasts was feasting on the bandits when he arrived, forcing him to slay the wolves while the rest scattered into the night. A villager steps forward to inspect the mangled remains, confirming deep claw marks that seem to verify Eugene's innocence. Another confirms the finding, noting that every bandit bears the savage signs of a wolf attack. Shame washes over the chief, and he bows his head to apologize. Eugene accepts it with a humble, deceptive smile. When Eugene asks about the bodies, the chief orders a burial, while Moran whispers in his ear, impressed by his terrifying ability to lie. The truth, however, is far darker. The wolves had arrived after the battle, so Eugene slaughtered them too to use as props. He had taken a severed wolf jaw and manually inflicted bite marks on the mercenaries to fabricate the perfect alibi. Moran watches him, wondering why a being of his power cares so deeply about maintaining a facade for mere humans. He could have walked away, yet he meticulously crafted a scenario to protect his reputation as a harmless villager. The fairy realizes a larger scheme is in motion as Eugene approaches the chief with a grave expression. He hands over a blood-stained envelope, claiming he found it while searching for the bandit's identification. The chief takes the letter, his hands shaking as he prepares to read the contents. His hands tremble as he recognizes the crimson seal instantly, confirming it belongs to Lord Terwin, the supreme ruler of this entire region. The chief's eyes bulge in sheer disbelief as he scans the terrifying contents of the letter, his voice raspy with shock as he asks if this nightmare is true. Adrenaline takes over. The chief whips around to the villagers, roaring at the top of his lungs, demanding to find a boy named Villy. A voice cuts through the tension, confirming that the boy is currently inside the village. Meanwhile, young Villy sits innocently eating his meal, unaware that the letter exposes a bloodline secret that shakes the heavens. He is the illegitimate son of Lord Terwin. The realization hits the village chief like a physical blow. These mercenaries didn't come for random plunder or chaos. They are a hit squad on a specific mission to target that boy, leaving the chief paralyzed by the fact that a high noble has been hiding among them all along. The scene shifts back to the blood-soaked battlefield, where the mercenary captain stands frozen, his mind unable to process the godlike power Eugene is using to annihilate his men. Eugene becomes a blur of motion, a reaper in human form moving with lightning speed among the terrified soldiers. He tears through their armor and flesh with bare hands, moving so fast they cannot even react. And the mercenaries realize that fleeing ensures only a quicker death. One of them screams a desperate war cry, trying to rally the others to fight rather than wait for the slaughter. They try to crush their fear, convincing themselves he is just a man with 2 arms and 2 legs, and they rush the monster in a suicidal wave of steel. But the mercenary captain finds himself rooted to the spot, unable to run due to his severe injury and primal terror. He curses the cruel heavens and his own wretched luck for crossing paths with a demon at this specific time. He tries to advance, but Eugene is already there, delivering a devastating kick that shatters his armor like glass and smashes him into the dirt. The captain's body launches backward, slamming into a massive tree trunk with bone-breaking force, causing him to cough up mouthfuls of dark blood. Reduced to a pathetic state, the captain crawls through the corpses of his own men, begging Eugene for mercy. With a voice trembling in fear, he asks if Eugene had been lying in wait for them, and why a monster would target them specifically. He stammers out excuses, trying to justify their aggression by claiming they were merely mercenaries doing a job. Eugene cuts him off, his eyes glowing with predatory crimson light, demanding the details of this job and declaring that this village is his personal territory. Panic grips the captain as he apologizes profusely, swearing he didn't know the land belonged to him and that they never came to hunt vampires. Desperate to live, the captain spills the truth, revealing the secret mission regarding the Terwin family. The illegitimate son is hiding in this village, concealed under a false identity while the world thought him missing, and their only order was to find him. Eugene narrows his gaze, accusing the captain of spinning skillful lies to save his skin. He points out the logical flaw. There is no reason to mobilize an entire army of mercenaries for a simple search and rescue mission. Eugene presses the blade of truth deeper, asking if they plan to massacre the village, and the captain crumbles, admitting Eugene's deduction is terrifyingly accurate. The captain finally reveals the puppet masters behind the shadows. They weren't hired by the patriarch, but by the ambitious rivals, Kamar Terwin and Veril Terwin. Eugene instantly recognizes the stench of a political succession war, while the captain explains their reasoning. The massive army was a precaution to silence witnesses and handle emergencies during the kidnapping, and he begs for forgiveness once more. But the name Verthal Terwin strikes Eugene like a thunderbolt, for he knows this enemy all too well. He's the leader of the Vampire Hunter Squad, the very knight who hunted Eugene down in his past life alongside the holy knight Jung Dirt. Eugene analyzes the chessboard quickly. A knight like Verhil wouldn't order a sloppy public massacre. The decision to exterminate the village came from these greedy mercenaries themselves to cover their tracks. Everything clicks into place. Eugene finally understands the catalyst for his downfall in the previous timeline. The Holy Knights didn't find him by mistake. The disappearance of this entire village triggered the massive investigation that led them right to his doorstep. The captain continues his pathetic plea, claiming he only saw an opportunity for gold. He swears on his life that he never would have accepted the contract had he known a predator like Eugene was watching. Eugene's expression turns cold as he orders the captain to leave, warning him about the wolves in the forest. A statement that shocks the captain, who expected death. The captain stammers broken words of gratitude, unable to believe he has been spared by the monster. But just as hope fills his heart, Eugene moves. A swift lightning strike sends the captain's head flying, ending his miserable life in a single heartbeat. The fairy Moran flutters in stunned silence, shocked by the abrupt and casual execution. But Eugene offers no apology. The mercenary knew his true nature as a vampire, and he cannot allow a loose end to whisper his secret to the world. He notes coldly that the wolves surrounding them are drooling with hunger, and it is time to feed the beasts. With the threat removed, Eugene returns to the village to weave his necessary lie, preparing to tell the chief that the dead men were merely bandits. The shocking truth came out: the mercenaries were merely guards sent to escort the boy, Vili, to the royal castle. Memories flooded the villagers' minds. Vili had arrived in their village 8 years ago, becoming an orphan after losing his mother just last year. Cold terror gripped their hearts as they realized the elite guards assigned to protect him had all been slaughtered. That was when Eugene stepped out of the shadows, offering his blade to shepherd the boy safely to the city. Boasting of survival skills honed by years in the monster-infested forest, the chief hesitated, conflict written on his face, struggling to ask for salvation from a stranger they had once feared as a beast. Eugene flashed a confident smile, declaring that a true knight never turns his back on those in need. Floating beside him, Miriam gagged, mocking his stiff expression and his terrifying talent for lying without blinking. The word knight hung in the air, freezing the villagers and Miriam in total confusion. Miriam stared at him, wondering in astonishment what game he was playing now. With the grace of a king, Eugene bowed and introduced himself as Jan Eugene of the noble house Eugene, apologizing smoothly for his late introduction, while Miriam whispered frantically at his audacity to impersonate high nobility. The social hierarchy flipped instantly. Villagers began scolding each other, terrified of their past rudeness to Sir Eugene, who was revealed to be a lord and not a monster. Miriam hissed in his ear that his lie had finally crossed the line, but Eugene reassured her with a sly, predatory smile, explaining that these isolated villagers had never glimpsed a true noble, making them easy prey for deception. Eugene knew the truth in this backwater. Not a single soul possessed the eyes to see through his disguise. The villagers swarmed him, eager to please, inventing their own heroic justifications for his long isolation in the forest. They whispered in awe, wondering if it was part of harsh night training or a period to recover from glorious battle wounds. Eugene played the part perfectly, nodding solemnly and confirming he had cut ties with the world due to special circumstances. Well, just like that, they became convinced that his savage hunting skills were actually the disciplined training of an elite knight. The chief bowed low, voice trembling with shame over their poverty and inability to reward a lord. But Eugene feigned humility, asking only for a place to rest his head. Overjoyed, the chief threw open his doors, considering it the greatest honor of his life to host a noble in his humble shack. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the window of the wooden cabin deep in the forest. Eugene examined his hand, activating the skin reinforcement skill stolen from the forest lord, watching his skin harden into thick black scales. He realized these scales were dense enough to block the lethal sunlight from his body to a great extent. Eugene decided to exploit this power, allowing him to travel by day and avoid unnecessary trouble. Miriam appeared to mock him again, calling him an ignorant vampire playing night when he couldn't even read a single letter. Eugene brushed off her mockery, stating he would leave this dump soon anyway, and ordered her to help him speak with the flowery elegance that served his current goal. Miriam could only stare, amazed by his sudden transformation from a loner to a quest-seeking adventurer making allies. The villagers approached, announcing their readiness to depart. Eugene pointed them out to Miriam, proudly displaying how he had gained prestigious social status overnight. He revealed his dark philosophy to her: humans trust authority and titles far more than flowery words. If you wear the armor of status, you can reduce 100 lies down to just 10, and the sheep will believe every word. As Eugene slid his mask into place, he remained grounded, realizing this trick only worked because of the village's simplicity. However, true nobles would sniff out a fraud in seconds, so Eugene decided he must force his lies to become reality. Leveraging the trust built on his good deeds, the village chief read a formal statement penned by Eugene to present to the boy. Vili. Internally, Eugene knew that words were wind. Wrapping the lie with raw power was the only way to make the world believe him. Vili introduced himself respectfully, eyes shining with hope for Sir Eugene's guidance on their perilous journey. Eugene realized that to cement these lies into solid facts, he desperately needed the high social standing this boy could provide. So he formally reintroduced himself to the boy as Jan Eugene of the Eugene family, and the two set off on their path. Eugene was determined to use this child as a stepping stone to become a real noble. They reached the outskirts of Bram's village as the wooden sign indicated, and Eugene noted the accuracy of the intel. Eugene asked the boy if he knew his letters, and Vili nodded, explaining that his late mother had taught him to read. The boy added that, despite her humble status, she learned from a man she loved, but he never imagined that person was the legendary Sir Terwin. Miriam saw the perfect opportunity Eugene could trick the boy into teaching him to read, claiming the tides of fate were in his favor. Vili looked stunned, confused by the request of a knight who could not read or write. Eugene scrambled to salvage the charade, spinning a dramatic tale that the knight title was a facade and his family had actually fallen into ruin. He had lived a life defined by steel, not words. His survival depended on the blade, not the pen. Vili swallowed the emotional tail hook, line, and sinker. Meanwhile, Eugene solidified his deception, twisting doubt into absolute faith. It is a universal truth. Once trust is earned, it becomes an impenetrable shield that conceals even the darkest of lies. Moran, the fairy, hovered nearby, mocking Eugene's Oscar-worthy performance. She warned him that a tower built of too many lies would eventually crumble, but one look at Vili said otherwise. His eyes shone with pure, naive trust. He had taken the bait without a single shred of suspicion. The boy bowed his head, offering a sincere apology to Eugene. He confessed his earlier wariness, admitting the villagers had painted Eugene as a monster rather than a noble. Guilt washed over him. He blamed himself for letting baseless rumors cloud his judgment and poison his mind. Vili vowed to trust only his own eyes from now on. He even rationalized Eugene's lack of knowledge, assuming a warrior had no time for books. In a hushed tone, Vili offered to teach him secretly. He wanted to spare the powerful warrior any public embarrassment. But just as the boy asked to know more about Eugene's mysterious past, the air shifted. A treacherous arrow whistled past his face. Vili let out a terrified scream, collapsing to the dirt. Eugene, however, simply watched the ambush unfold with ice-cold eyes. Bandits emerged from the shadows of the trees. One sneered, mocking his comrade for the sloppy aim that missed the target. Vili trembled violently, staring at the rough men. His mind raced in horror. Were these the ruthless highwaymen mentioned in stories? The bandits scanned their prey and smirked. Judging by appearances, they assumed this robbery would be quick, easy, and bloody. "Drop the luggage and empty your pockets," they barked, threatening to slaughter them both if they hesitated for even a second. But in the blink of an eye, steel sang. Eugene drew his blade, his stance shifting instantly for the slaughter. He moved like a phantom, closing the distance in a heartbeat. His blade flashed, and the leader's head went spinning into the air. Vili watched, jaw dropped in disbelief. A bandit screamed for his fallen captain, unable to process the sudden, bloody eruption of violence. Eugene danced through the chaos, light and graceful. He savored the familiar weight of the sword, reveling in his lethal proficiency. One fool rushed in with an axe, screaming curses. Eugene didn't even blink. With lightning speed, he severed the man's head from his shoulders. It was a massacre. Eugene unleashed a storm of cutting strikes, painting the forest floor with scattered blood. Seeing his comrades fall like flies, a thief screamed for mercy. Eugene answered by driving his blade straight through the man's chest. As he dismantled them, a cold thought crossed Eugene's mind. Why do humans insist on preying upon the weak? While his blade found the neck, he mused silently. Does the mere appearance of weakness give others the right to torment and destroy? As the last bandit choked on his own blood, Eugene turned to the boy. "Will your books explain this cruel nature of humanity?" Vili stared, eyes wide with horror. He remembered his vow to judge only what he saw, and right now, he saw a god of death. Eugene wiped his blade, his voice devoid of warmth. "Believe what you wish, but know this: not a single drop of blood shall touch you while I am here." Leaving the carnage behind, they finally arrived at the city. The market was alive, a chaotic symphony of vendors shouting their wares. Eugene observed a heated haggle nearby, while Moran zipped happily through the crowd. The boy leaned in, warning Eugene to keep his guard up in this viper's nest. Vili explained urgently that these merchants were predators who feasted on strangers with exorbitant prices. Even their wise village chief had been scammed time and time again. They watched a customer scream for a refund. Realizing he'd been robbed blind compared to the shop next door, Eugene realized caution was secondary. First, he needed coin. Asking Billy to wait, Eugene stepped into a shop. He threw his bundle on the counter, offering skins for sale and demanding a valuation. The merchant's eyes nearly popped out of his skull. Before him lay a massive pile of black wolf pelts, rare treasures indeed. He scanned Eugene's tattered clothing. He figured this wasn't a savvy merchant, but just a clueless, wandering vagabond. A malicious grin spread across his face. Seeing an easy mark, he lowballed him. 18 silver pieces. He lied, claiming the pristine furs were damaged. Eugene didn't blink. He simply stared, his eye glowing with a sinister crimson light that froze the merchant's blood. Sweat beaded on the merchant's forehead. He stammered, suddenly remembering how rare these skins were, and offered to raise the price slightly. Eugene took a step forward, silence radiating menace. The merchant averted his gaze in terror, silently begging Eugene to just speak instead of piercing his soul with that look. The merchant let out a high-pitched, nervous laugh, trying to break the tension. "Since it's your first time," he squeaked, "I'll make it 23 piece." Eugene merely hummed, a low vibration that sounded like a growling beast. Panic rising, the merchant shouted, 25 pieces. The man was unraveling. 27, no, 28, he cried, while Villied watched from the door, dumbfounded by this silent negotiation. Eugene finally made a sound, a sharp grunt, terrified. The merchant practically wept. "What do you want, you monster? How much?" The deal closed at 30 silver pieces, every last coin the merchant had. Eugene took the money without a word and walked out, soon reappearing in elegant, noble attire. Despite mastering the basics from Villy, Eugene stared at the signboard in frustration. To his eyes, the twisted letters still looked like wriggling worms. Miriam, however, was focused on material gains. She eyed his new outfit with satisfaction, convinced the decent fabric was well worth the gold. Eugene tried to defend the transaction. He insisted the merchant was a generous soul, even though this was his first experience in the world of commerce. But the spirit mocked his naivety. She pointed out that the man was just a pushover, her eyes shining with unbridled greed at the sight of 30 silver coins. Yet, regret gnawed at her. She scolded Eugene for not pressing his advantage, lamenting that he had missed a golden opportunity to swindle expensive silk from the fool. Eugene offered a simple, pragmatic defense. He didn't care for fashion. He only needed garments thick enough to shield his skin from the burning sunlight. Miriam clicked her tongue in annoyance. She ridiculed his dreary existence, lecturing him that he should embrace the pleasures of life rather than hiding in the shadows like a rat. Her imagination took flight as she began to narrate her ultimate fantasy. She spoke of the highborn vampires of legend. She described them lounging in obsidian castles, draped in the finest silks, sipping fresh blood from crystal goblets. To her, ambition was the only ladder worth climbing in this world. Eugene blinked, genuinely surprised. For a spirit who had spent her existence in a desolate swamp, her knowledge of high society was shockingly vast. Miriam puffed out her chest with pride. As a denizen of the spirit world, she had absorbed the tales of ancient elders who had walked the human realm and returned with priceless wisdom. Her tone turned serious as she offered strategic advice. He needed to master the imperial tongue and the secrets of ancient runes immediately. After all, unless a blade found his heart, he was destined to roam this earth for at least 200 years. Ignorance was a luxury he could not afford. Eugene suddenly cut through her lecture with a sharp question. Could she actually read? Her confidence vanished instantly as she answered with brutal honesty, no. Later that night, the crackle of the campfire was the only sound. Villy approached hesitantly, interrupting Eugene, who seemed to be deep in conversation with thin air. The boy's voice trembled with nervousness. He asked who Eugene had been speaking to, as his eyes could see no one else in the dark clearing. Eugene salvaged the slip-up with a smooth lie. He claimed he was merely muttering to himself, then quickly pivoted, asking the boy if his stomach had settled after the earlier sickness. Shame colored Villy's face. He bowed his head, apologizing profusely for the unsightly scene he had caused. The boy explained his weakness. Watching the rabbit being skinned had triggered a visceral flashback to the morning's massacre, churning his stomach violently. Miriam scoffed, calling the boy too soft for this world, but Eugene offered a grim reassurance, noting that ordinary humans were never meant to get used to the sight of corpses. Determined to be useful, the boy shook off his gloom. He insisted he still had energy to burn and that the night was far too long to waste on sleep. Billy's eyes lit up with enthusiasm. Since they had surplus paper, he offered to teach Eugene how to write. Clearly desperate to prove his worth, the lesson began under the starlight. Billy watched in stunned silence, amazed by the terrifying speed at which Eugene absorbed the complex characters. His praise was genuine and filled with awe. He told Eugene that he had just mastered in hours what usually took ordinary students months to comprehend. But Eugene brushed off the compliment with humility. His expression darkened as he wondered if basic literacy would be enough for Billy, a boy destined to become a noble heir overnight. Billy's shoulders slumped. He admitted the reality hadn't sunk in yet. His mother had kept him in the dark, and he had never dared to dream of such a future. A sad, fragile smile touched the boy's lips, but the tension in his frame was undeniable. He confessed his deepest fear. He didn't even expect Sir Terwin to welcome a sudden son with open arms. But before Eugene could respond, the atmosphere shattered. A group of armed horsemen emerged from the tree line, their presence heavy and imposing. A man with a friendly face and a light beard stepped forward. He greeted them warmly, explaining they were struggling to find camp and asking to share the fire. Eugene's gaze turned razor sharp. He scrutinized their gear, noting the high-quality steel and the pristine condition of their armor. More importantly, their formation was flawless. These were not common bandits or desperate vagrants. They were disciplined professionals. Eugene realized instantly that they were seasoned mercenaries. Their leader, sharp-eyed and observant, spotted the child and casually asked for their destination. Eugene's mind raced. This man was asking with the calculation of a veteran. A clumsy lie here would only breed suspicion and invite danger. He chose the path of calculated truth. Looking the man in the eye, he declared they were traveling to the domain of Lord Terwin. Captain Bartik beamed, his tension dissolving. He announced they were heading the same way and offered to share their supplies in exchange for a spot by the fire. But the peace was short-lived. A blond soldier interrupted rudely, his voice dripping with disdain. His name was Robin, and he loudly objected to sharing their camp with a group of suspicious strangers. Captain Bartik sighed, apologizing to Eugene for the outburst. He explained that Robin was a rookie mercenary who hadn't yet learned his place or his limits. Bartik formally introduced himself, extending a hand. Eugene met his gaze and responded with a calm declaration, "I am Knight Jan Eugene." The blond soldier froze, then snorted. "A knight." He repeated the title with dripping sarcasm. Robin burst into mocking laughter. He pointed a finger at Eugene, asking what kind of knight traveled without a horse, armor, or even a sword. Emboldened, Robin stepped into Eugene's personal space. He challenged him, demanding he drop the act and admit he was nothing but a fraud. He poked a finger hard into Eugene's chest, sneering that no noble house named Eugene existed. His face twisted into a demonic sly grin as he accused him of forgery. Eugene stared back, his eyes glowing with a cold, crimson light. He had already told Billy he was a knight. There was no turning back now. Eugene's eyes turned to ice as he coldly dissects the situation. He realizes these mercenaries didn't approach just to check his credentials. Whether he is a true knight or a fraud is irrelevant to them right now. However, he knows one wrong move could be fatal. If they push their doubts too far, the balance of power will shatter. Beneath his cloak, Eugene's hand tightens around his sword hilt. He calculates the odds instantly. Their numbers are few. If it comes to bloodshed, he can slaughter them all. But Leader Bartik senses it, the suffocating killing intent radiating from Eugene. Panic rises in his chest, and he barks a sharp command to Robin, his reckless subordinate. Moving with the speed of lightning, Bartik delivers a devastating punch to Robin's face before the fool can take another step. Eugene watches the violence unfold with terrifying calm. The force of the blow sends Robin's body ragdolling through the air, crashing into the dirt with a sickening thud. Desperate to save face, the leader rushes to bow before Eugene. He begs for forgiveness, pleading for mercy regarding the rookie's fatal insolence. Eugene accepts the apology with the cold arrogance of a ruler, commanding them to hold their positions. As the leader expresses gratitude for his patience, Eugene's mind races. He knows the seeds of suspicion have already taken root. He must fully embody the persona of a knight immediately to deflect prying eyes. Later, in the safety of the shadows, Bartik sits beside the unconscious Robin. Robin gasps awake, clutching his face in shock, wondering why his own leader struck him with such force. Bartik looks down on him with disdain, calling him a brainless imbecile. His voice trembles with rage. How dare he provoke a predator without fear? It was a death wish. Smack! A sharp blow to the head drives the point home. Bartik hisses the truth. He didn't just hit him, he saved his life. They all nearly met the Reaper because of his stupidity. Robin scoffs, still blind to the danger. He mocks the shabby man with the short sword, underestimating the monster before him. The leader sighs at his ignorance, accusing him of judging a book by its cover. The boy is so short-sighted he can't see past his own nose. Bartik demands an appraisal of Eugene's cloak. It's crafted from high-grade lycanthrope leather. Even a scrap costs more than 10 silver coins. Robin freezes, his jaw dropping. He realizes the fabric alone is worth 3 months of his blood and sweat. The leader presses on. Eugene was reading a letter. In this world, literacy is a weapon of the elite, proving he is far from a common peasant. Then comes the bone-chilling revelation. Eugene was actually preparing to draw his blade. Had that steel left the sheath, they would be corpses right now. Perhaps only one lucky soul would have survived the massacre. While Robin chattered like a fool without knowing his place, the scythe of death was already at his throat from every angle. Bartik explains the microscopic details. Eugene's hand was already gripping the weapon inside his cloak, and his left foot had shifted back. It was a combat stance of pure slaughter, utilized only by experts, who understand how to distribute their weight for a perfect, lethal strike. Bartik whispers the horror. If he had hesitated for just 1 second, Robin's head would be rolling on the ground. Robin tries to salvage his pride, stammering that the leader would have surely blocked the attack. Bartik looks at him with grave seriousness. The boy truly understands nothing of the abyss that separates them from a knight. Knights are born into violence. From the moment they can walk, they hold wooden swords, dedicating every heartbeat to the art of killing. They plunge into the darkness of unknown dungeons, piercing through monstrosities without a flicker of hesitation. They carve their legends on piles of corpses in the battlefield. Only those whose hands are drenched in oceans of blood catch the eye of the nobility. Only after surviving that hell do they earn the title of knight. The leader explains that impersonating a knight is a capital crime. But whether Eugene is real or fake is irrelevant. Anyone who claims that title so boldly is a disaster waiting to happen. Bartik asserts that no one makes that gamble unless they are confident enough to bet their soul on their sword. For Eugene to reveal his identity so young means he has ascended to a terrifying realm of power. Sweat pours down Robin's face. He asks the unthinkable, "Is he stronger than you, boss?" Bartik admits the grim reality through gritted teeth. Most likely. The leader concludes that Eugene is bound for Lord Terwin's castle, likely drawn by the newly discovered dungeon. Fate is cruel. Since they are traveling the same path, their encounter is inevitable. Meanwhile, in the darkness, a single eye glints. Eugene heard everything. A sly, predatory smile curves his lips. The title of knight is a heavier shield than he thought, perfect for his plan. But arrogance is a trap. He knows he must refine his disguise to perfection. His strategic mind dissects the group. Aside from the foolish rookie, the rest are skilled professionals, which raises a disturbing question in the silence of the night. Why would the Tyan family stoop so low? Why hire the trash I just slaughtered when they clearly have the gold to command elite professionals like this? Why not deploy their own private army? It didn't add up. Eugene sensed a missing link, a shadow of conspiracy lurking beneath the surface. The mercenary stiffened as Eugene approached. Robin's voice trembled, cracking with nerves as he stammered, asking why the stranger was walking straight for them. Eugene lowered his hood, revealing a dazzling smile. With practiced charm, he mentioned hearing that they, too, were bound for Lord Tion's castle. His voice was smooth as silk, utterly convincing. He suggested they join forces for the road ahead, ruthlessly exploiting the situation to serve his own ends. Robin, the rookie, was completely thunderstruck. He stood frozen, captivated by Eugene's sudden, overwhelming handsomeness. That blinding smile sealed the deal. Robin stammered out an enthusiastic yes before his brain could catch up, leaving his squad leader staring at him in utter disbelief. The convoy soon arrived at Martilla. Situated in the Twin Territory, the village was a vibrant tapestry of life, its streets pulsing with the energy of countless travelers. Eugene moved through the crowd, face concealed once more. Relief washed over him. The mercenary group had bought his lie hook, line, and sinker. Believing him to be a noble knight, they had unwittingly handed him a golden key to unlock the secrets he desperately needed. Suddenly, the fairy Miriam materialized beside him, buzzing with curiosity about his next move. She chirped, "Lord Eugene," in a bright, cheerful tone. Miriam reported her success. She had followed his orders perfectly. eavesdropping on every whisper exchanged among the mercenaries. Eugene's expression turned serious. He cut to the chase, demanding to know if she had uncovered anything of value. Miriam dropped a bombshell. Lord Tion's health was collapsing. He stood at death's door, and the Reaper could come for him as early as tomorrow. But there was more. A new dungeon had spawned on his lands. Conquering it promised unimaginable riches, yet the Tion family lacked the gold and the might to claim it. Eugene's eyes glinted with interest at the mention of the dungeon. Miriam, however, was consumed by worry for the young boy, Vili. "If Lord Tion dies now, what becomes of the child?" she asked. "Won't he just be cast aside as an orphan the moment he arrives?" Eugene's reply was ice cold. "That is not my concern." His apathy ignited Miriam's fury, and she screamed at him, condemning his heartless inaction. Her voice trembled with anxiety. "In the chaos of the succession war, his brothers will slaughter him like a dog. Is that what you want?" Eugene gazed at Vili, standing silent in the bustling crowd. The pieces clicked into place. He finally understood the true motive behind the summons. Lord Tion didn't want an heir. He simply wanted to see his illegitimate son one last time before the end. Eugene murmured to himself. From this moment on, the gears of destiny were turning. Both his fate and the boys were about to be irrevocably rewritten. At last, they arrived. Looming on the horizon was Rose Castle, Lord Tion's seat of power, a massive, majestic fortress dominating the landscape. Passing through the main gate, Eugene scanned the perimeter. The scale of the structure was immense, far exceeding his calculations. Miriam fluttered around him, bedazzled by the luxury. "Lord Eugene, you must climb the ranks fast, then you can live in a palace just like this." Eugene silenced her with a sharp look. "Enough nonsense," he muttered, stepping forward. "We're going in." Vili watched them, bewildered by Eugene's behavior. Suddenly, a guard blocked their path, his voice stern as he demanded their identities and purpose. Leader Bartik stepped up, flashing a confident, practiced smile. "We are mercenaries," he announced, "commissioned by the Balin Merchant Guild." The guard's eyes narrowed. He gestured to the others, demanding to know who the rest of the party was. Before he could speak, a blond man with unparalleled arrogance cut in. It was Kamar, the eldest son and heir. "Does this carriage hold my goods?" he asked coldly. Bartik bowed, confirming the safe delivery. Kamar didn't even look at him. "Then don't just stand there like statues," he barked rudely. "Start unloading immediately." Kamar's gaze landed on Eugene, who stood apart from the laborers. "You there," he sneered, his tone dripping with condescension. "Who are you? Why aren't you working like the rest?" Eugene stepped forward, his composure unshakable. "I am Knight Jan Eugene," he declared smoothly. He gestured toward Vili, "and this child is under my protection." Suddenly, a commanding voice sliced through the air. "Brother Kamar," it scolded. Eugene froze, his head snapping toward the source of the sound. "I know that voice," Eugene muttered. Kamar's face twisted in visible annoyance at the interruption. A knight in gleaming armor and a crimson cloak marched forward. "I have told you repeatedly," he asserted strictly. "Inspecting strangers is my duty as the guard captain." Eugene stared at him, his focus intensifying. Under his mask, Eugene's expression froze. It was him. He told himself it was impossible, but he could never forget the tone of that man's voice. His mind was instantly dragged back to the painful past. The image of the general director of the vampire hunting unit surfaced from the depths of his memory. It was the man who had first found him, back when he was nothing but a fugitive hiding in the shadows. Eugene froze as the memories crashed into him. This was the man who had tortured him, the nightmare who had hunted him down like a dog alongside young Dirt. The voice belonged to none other than Bertil Talion. The second son of the prestigious Tion family stood there, radiating authority in his crimson cloak. Bertil glared at his older brother, his voice dripping with suspicion as he demanded to know what he was doing out here. Kamar shot him a sideways glance, his expression a mix of annoyance and biting sarcasm. He asked if he needed to file a report for breathing, mocking Bertil for strutting around as if he were already the family patriarch. Bertil's face twisted in irritation, and he sharply denied the accusation. Eugene cut through the family drama like a blade. He presented a letter, announcing calmly that it came from Chief Jeb of Broadwin Village. Bertil reached for the letter, shock flashing across his face at the name Broadwin, but Eugene snatched his hand away at the last second. With a cold stare locked on Bertil, Eugene deliberately handed the letter to Kamar instead. Kamar scanned the parchment, and his eyes widened in disbelief. The mercenaries had been slaughtered by wolves, and this trembling child was their father's illegitimate blood. Billy stepped forward, his small body shaking as he whispered his name to these intimidating strangers. Instantly, Kamar's shock vanished behind a plastic smile. He welcomed the boy warmly as their new brother. While Bertil glared with icy malice, Kamar lied through his teeth, claiming their father had missed the boy dearly. Bertil barked orders at the servants, treating the boy like an object. He demanded they scrub him clean and dress him in something presentable. Villy's eyes darted to Eugene, filled with pure terror at being separated. Before they could drag the boy away, Eugene stepped in. The interruption stunned Bertil, who froze, unable to believe a commoner dared to speak. Eugene stood his ground. He demanded his reward and a face-to-face meeting with Lord Tion immediately. Bertil exploded, shouting that such a request was impossible. He snapped that their father's health was critical. He offered to pay Eugene off in gold coins right now if he just took the money and vanished. Eugene stared at them, his eyes glowing with a menacing red hue. After the hell he had endured to bring this precious brother here, he wasn't about to be dismissed for a handful of coins. The air grew heavy with Eugene's silent threat. He warned them not to make him repeat himself. Suddenly, Kamar chimed in, asking why a meeting was impossible. His support for the stranger made Bertil scream in his brother's face. The rift between the siblings was on full display. Kamar argued that the new heir had to be introduced to the patriarch, regardless of his condition. But Bertil dug his heels in. He insisted their father couldn't stay awake for even an hour, and he refused to let a nameless wanderer disturb him. The argument escalated into a shouting match. Bertil accused Kamar of having ulterior motives. He claimed Kamar was manipulating their father's schedule for his own gain, while Bertil fired back, accusing him of twisting words. Kamar turned to Eugene with a theatrical sigh, offering a fake apology for the difficulty caused by his stubborn brother. He placed a hand on Eugene's shoulder, his voice dripping with artificial kindness as he told him to return home safely. Then, he turned his attention to Villy, promising to guide him personally. He suggested a tour of the castle first, and the boy followed him, head hung low in defeat. Eugene watched them leave, his gaze piercing. He realized with cold clarity that they never intended to let him see the Lord. Suddenly, the earth shook. A massive shadow loomed over Bertil, greeting the second son with a booming voice. A towering giant with red hair appeared, carrying a pile of unconscious men like sacks of grain. He grinned savagely, saying he had been hunting for them. With a thud, the man tossed the bodies onto the ground in front of the stunned group. He explained that these were mercenaries caught looting the villagers instead of training, so he had collected the trash himself. The massive red-haired beast, named Galactic, let out a dark chuckle. He suggested they execute one of the captives right here as an example to the others, wondering aloud if anyone objected to the bloodbath. Bertil glanced at Eugene, wary of the chaotic atmosphere. He realized these mercenaries were vital for the upcoming dungeon raid. He cut off Galactic's bloodlust firmly. He stated he would discipline the men later and suggested they move inside the castle, away from prying eyes. Galactic shrugged, agreeing to the order without hesitation. As the nobles walked away, the mercenary leader Bartik whispered to Eugene, did he know who that monster was? It was Sir Galactic. Bartik's voice was filled with awe. This man had taken third place in the prestigious Evergrove tournament, a rising star in the knighthood. He described Galactic's strength as something out of a nightmare, resembling a monster more than a man. With purely overwhelming technique, he had crushed over 1,000 competitors in the arena that day. Eugene narrowed his eyes, studying the horizon. Why would a heavyweight with that kind of power descend upon this backwater territory? Bartik grunted, the answer obvious to anyone paying attention. It was the call of the void, the opening of a pristine, newly discovered dungeon. He turned to Eugene, his voice low. The knight who claims the first clear doesn't just get gold, they seize eternal glory and a reputation that rings across the continent. But that path is paved with corpses. Countless souls are devoured in the attempt. Yet, Bartik saw the truth behind the risk. Sir Gallic was gambling his life for a ticket to the big leagues. He intended to use this conquest as a stepping stone to demand a title from a true high house, knighthood. Eugene tested the word on his tongue, plotting his next move. Then, his gaze snapped to Bartik. Speaking of titles, our contract dies today, doesn't it? The mercenary captain nodded slowly, confirming the expiration with a silent question in his eyes. A smile, sharp and unreadable, curled beneath Eugene's mask. Then I have a new proposition for you, one you won't want to miss. That night, shadows clung to Kamar within the castle walls. He watched Bertiel torment the mercenaries, a fire of resentment burning in his own gut. He had to be the one to shatter that dungeon gate, not anyone else, and certainly not his brother. Dark thoughts consumed him as he remembered Bale, who had been openly eyeing the heir's seat ever since their father's health collapsed. But now, the reality was setting in. Bertiel, bringing in a powerhouse like Sir Gallic and leveraging his connections meant checkmate. Kamar knew it with absolute certainty. His brother was planning to claim the dungeon conquest for himself. If that happened, public opinion would worship Bertiel. The people's support would shift like the tide, washing away Kamar's position entirely. Despair clawed at his throat. He felt helpless, cornered. He couldn't trust his fate in this massive challenge to random sellswords against a monster like Gallic. His spiral of panic was severed by a servant's voice. "Sir Eugene requests an audience." Kamar blinked, caught completely off guard. "The knight who saved the boy." "Vili." Kamar composed himself, remembering the man's strength. After a moment's hesitation, he gave the order, "Send him in." The heavy doors groaned open. Eugene strode in, his presence filling the room as Kamar welcomed him with forced politeness. "Sir Eugene." Kamar moved to control the board immediately. "Rest easy regarding young Vili," he said smoothly. "I am personally ensuring his safety." He gestured for the knight to sit. "My father will reward you properly the moment he wakes. You have my word." A smirk touched Kamar's lips as he recalled the earlier scene. "And that letter you delivered right in front of Bertiel, a bold move. It gave me a rare moment of dignity before my rival." Eugene offered a polite, practiced smile. "I am glad to have been of service." But then, the air shifted. Eugene's tone dropped. However, stepping into a family feud as a third party is complicated business. Kamar leaned forward, cutting to the chase. "Then why are you here to check on my father?" "That is part of it," Eugene answered, his gaze unwavering. "But primarily, Lord Kamar, I am here to make you a special offer." His eyes pierced through the noble's defenses. "I want a slot on the dungeon subjugation squad." Silence. Then, Kamar exploded into laughter. It was a harsh, jagged sound, dripping with sarcasm at the sheer absurdity of the request. He wiped a tear of mirth from his eye. "You truly..." He shook his head, looking at the masked man. "You are funnier than I expected. Sir Eugene, are you even a knight?" Kamar's voice turned venomous. "I heard the rumors. You killed 5 bandits. Bravo. Do you think that qualifies you for a dungeon? Are you just trying to ride my coattails to boost your reputation? Why in the world would I indulge this fantasy?" Eugene didn't flinch. He just smiled to the smile of a predator who has already won. "Because my offer is the lifeline you're drowning without." He leaned in, revealing the terms that would shake the noble's resolve. 100 silver coins for me and my men, 50% of the byproduct loot, and I waive all rights to the magic stones. The laughter died in Kamar's throat. His expression hardened into suspicion. It was too cheap. Suspiciously cheap, far below any market standard. Eugene watched him coldly. "Well, do you like the deal, or not?" That sly grin returned, sharp as a blade. Eugene delivered the harsh truth. "Take your time, but remember, I'm not the one running out of time. You are." He let the numbers hang in the air. 100 silver, half the trash loot, 0 magic stones. It was practically charity. Kamar's mind raced, calculating the angles. It wasn't just generous, it was impossible. The offer was so good it raised every red flag he had. "Do you realize what you're saying?" Kamar asked, his voice low. "That price is an insult to your own skills. It's practically free." Kamar studied the masked man. No family crest, no greed in his eyes. He looked like a wandering knight, unattached to any noble house. Honor, Kamar realized. To him, honor is the only currency that matters. He began to paint a picture in his mind, Eugene as the noble warrior, rising above material wealth. That had to be the reason for this meager request. It was a golden ticket dropped into his lap, an irreplaceable opportunity. But as Kamar opened his mouth, Eugene's confident smile reminded him of the brutal reality. Eugene could walk away, but Kamar? Kamar was racing against the clock. Kamar's eyes widened as the truth hit him. Eugene wasn't just a brute relying on muscle like the others. No, this man was a strategist, manipulating the entire board to his absolute advantage. The lens through which Kamar viewed the young warrior shattered and reformed. He saw a sharp cunning within Eugene that the traditional, honor-bound knights completely lacked. Admiration began to swell in his chest. Kamar made his choice instantly. There was no reason to refuse such a golden opportunity. He extended his hand, gripping Eugene's firmly, eager to forge this new alliance. Eugene then broke down the cold, hard logic behind his plan. Waving magic stones is a fool's game, he explained. Purifying them was a nightmare too difficult, and the processing fees bled you dry. But monster byproducts, Eugene continued, those are sold immediately at full market price. It was faster liquid cash and far more profitable. His mind flashed back to his conversation with Bartik, remembering the simple request he had made an introduction to a trustworthy merchant guild to fence the goods. Naturally, the mercenary Captain Bartik had agreed with a greedy, ear-to-ear grin. Back in the present, Kamar welcomed him with open arms. With terms this favorable, the deal was sealed. But elsewhere, in the war room, the atmosphere was far more hostile. Betrayal scoffed, calling the idea of adding a last-minute recruit to the subjugation squad utterly ridiculous. This dungeon is not a playground for children, Galadik growled. He waved his dagger through the air, the blade humming with a lethal threat. He laid down his iron law inside the dungeon. There are only two paths, survival or death. If a man falls behind even once, he dies where he stands, Galadik declared, announcing his zero-tolerance policy for half-baked warriors who would slow them down. Betrayal sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. My expectations were already in the dirt, he muttered. After all, this stray dog was picked up by my incompetent brother, Kamar. Believing his brother lacked any powerful connections, Betrayal turned to his subordinate, Alfred. If things go wrong, dispose of the new knight yourself. Alfred blinked, surprised by the ruthless order. Suddenly, the door swung open. Kamar stepped in, feigning an apology for the delay. I was just chatting with our newest asset, he announced. With a stiff, practiced smile, Kamar formally introduced Eugene, declaring his official entry into the squad. Eugene glided in like a shadow behind Kamar, flanked by Bartik's rough-looking mercenary crew. Betrayal's eyes narrowed as he scrutinized the newcomer. He recognized him immediately, the man who led that ragtag group of sellswords he had seen earlier. Hold it, Betrayal interrupted with a cold, venomous smile. With all due respect, we cannot accept a nobody with unverified skills. Kamar didn't flinch. He replied with absolute confidence. I guarantee his skill with my life, Kamar stated. Betrayal and Galadik exchanged skeptical glances, unimpressed by his conviction. Do you recall the bandit group terrorizing our border? Kamar asked. The ones you all failed to eliminate for months? Kamar dropped his trump card. Sir Eugene wiped out the entire gang, single-handedly, with nothing but a short sword. He paused, letting the words sink in. Is that enough proof? Whoosh! Without warning, a dagger tore through the air, flying at lightning speed straight for Eugene's face. Clang! With terrifying calm, Eugene deflected the blade. It spun away, burying itself deep into the wooden wall behind him with a dull thud. The room went dead silent. Then, Galadik stepped forward from the shadows. A savage, bloodthirsty grin stretched across his face. All right, then. Galadik offered a mock apology for his rudeness, but his eyes told a different story. He looked at Eugene's pale complexion and sneered. Smooth skin, no tan. You look like a spoiled young master who's never seen the sun. The giant knight drew himself up to his full, imposing height in front of Eugene. His eyes burned with a blatant challenge. Do you mind showing us what you can really do, young master? He provoked. Outside, the news spread like wildfire. Crowds flooded the square, screaming in disbelief that the legendary Sir Galadik was about to duel someone right now. All eyes locked onto the castle square. The anticipation was suffocating. Everyone wanted to see the power of the knight who took third place in the grand tournament. Whispers of terror and awe rippled through the mob. He tears monsters apart with his bare hands, they murmured, wondering if the beast known as Galadik was even human. In stark contrast, Eugene stood motionless. He was completely calm in the face of this human monster. Poor kid, a spectator muttered, feeling pity. Galadik drew his massive greatsword, his smile widening with arrogant confidence. Eugene drew his blade, perfectly mimicking Galadik's stance. The referee shouted, and the bells tolled. signaling the start of the carnage. Boom! Galadic launched himself forward with explosive speed. Swords clashed violently. Sparks erupted like fireworks as steel ground against steel. The blows came fast and heavy. Eugene skillfully parried the monster's attacks, the sheer force of the collision sending stone fragments scattering into the air. Galadic laughed with savage enjoyment, taunting Eugene to stop running and face him head-on. But suddenly, the tide turned. Eugene unleashed a relentless barrage of strikes. And for the first time, the giant Galadic was forced to retreat, buckling under the weight of the overwhelming attack. The mercenaries watched the duel in awestruck silence, while a rookie soldier questioned if Galadic was being pushed back without a fight. But Commander Bartik scoffed at the naive observation, explaining that Galadic wasn't losing. He was merely testing the waters and reading his opponent's aura. Eugene unleashed a storm of sweeping attacks, believing he controlled the flow of battle, unaware that Galadic was baiting him on purpose. In those fleeting seconds, Galadic dissected his enemy's style with surgical precision, noticing the swordsmanship was far rougher and more chaotic than anticipated. There was no rhythm to follow and no habits to exploit, making it nearly impossible to predict the next strike. Galadic came to a chilling conclusion. This was not a technique polished within the safety of a training hall, but the savage style of a beast raised in the wild, relying purely on animal instinct. Eugene sensed the analytical weight of Galadic's gaze, but the veteran knight only smiled mockingly and accused him of lying about his noble status. Galadic skillfully tore away Eugene's mask, describing his blade work as ruthless and pointing out that his stance was clumsy, asserting that he lacked formal discipline and survived only on supernatural physical specs. He added that being a knight required more than just a sharp blade. Realizing that a mere exchange of blows had exposed the boy's entire history, Eugene decided to answer with steel instead of words, launching a vicious attack while telling the old man he talked too much. Galadic blocked the strike with a maniacal grin, challenging Eugene to defeat him if he wanted to silence that mouth. The tempo exploded instantly, transforming the arena into a chaotic hurricane of clashing steel and sparks. Galadic unleashed a devastating overhead smash, forcing Eugene to raise his guard in a desperate attempt to block. A massive explosion erupted from the impact, kicking up a thick cloud of dust that swallowed the combatants whole. The crowd roared with adrenaline while Burley smirked in triumph, wondering if Eugene had been knocked unconscious by that earth-shattering blow. But suddenly, a terrifying red eye glowed from the smoke, and Eugene burst forth with the speed of a lightning bolt. Galadic blocked the ambush, but shock paralyzed him as he realized Eugene was learning and evolving in real time during the fight. The two warriors exchanged a flurry of lethal strikes as Eugene matched Galadic's savagery, culminating in a collision so powerful it shattered both their swords. Without hesitation, the warriors tossed aside their broken, useless hilts at the exact same moment. It turned into a brawl as hands locked together, their faces inches apart in a silent, intense contest of will. Galadic laughed in sheer disbelief, wondering how this small frame could contain such monstrous, overwhelming physical strength. Staring into his opponent's eyes, Galadic admitted the inescapable truth to himself. In terms of raw power, the boy was vastly superior. However, Galadic knew that while the boy was a monster in strength, he himself held the absolute advantage in decades of combat experience. Shifting his center of gravity, Galadic changed his stance with intense focus, preparing to weaponize that experience. He rushed in with a sweeping strike, but Eugene dodged with unnatural flexibility, leaving the veteran striking empty air. Galadic pressed the assault, trying to crush Eugene under the weight of his massive strength, but the boy weaved through the attacks like a phantom. In the heat of the clash, Eugene spotted a microscopic opening in the veteran's defense and coiled his muscles for a counter. Galadic realized too late that Eugene's movements weren't the precise drills of a knight, but rapid adaptations driven by a desperate survival instinct. Before his mind could process the danger, Eugene surprised him with a thunderous punch to the face, leaving Galadic wondering where this mysterious fighter came from. Galadic accepted his defeat internally the moment the fist connected. The impact sent Galadic's massive frame flying through the air as if he were weightless. The knight's body slammed violently into the arena wall, shattering the stone and raising another cloud of debris. The referee announced the end of the duel with a trembling voice, declaring the victory of Knight Jan Eugene. While Eugene stood there panting for breath, the audience erupted into shocked whispers and stunned disbelief. They could not comprehend that this unknown knight possessed the insane strength required to take down a titan like Galadic. Eugene's mercenaries burst into laughter and swelled with pride, boasting that this monster was their leader and knight. Amidst the rubble, Galadik opened his eyes, staring blankly at the ceiling of the sky. He rose slowly, and the crowd watched in fear, anticipating a violent outburst after such a humiliation. Galadik marched heavily toward Eugene, who raised his guard. Suddenly, Galadik grabbed Eugene's hand and hoisted it high, demanding applause for the true winner, catching Eugene completely off guard. The crowd lost their minds with enthusiasm, chanting the name Jan Eugene until it echoed through every corner of the castle. Bertil watched the spectacle, his face twisted in a mix of shock and suppressed rage at this disaster of a result. The scene shifted to the castle interior, where Eugene sat before a luxurious feast, as servants informed him of strict orders from Master Kamar. The servant insisted that Kamar had ordered a feast for Eugene. He needed strength for the dungeon, so they watched his plate like hawks, supervising every bite with extreme care. The attendant stood like a statue, waiting for Eugene to praise the lighting and select a fine wine. Meanwhile, the fairy Mirren buzzed in his ear, cackling that they couldn't exactly tell humans that vampires had no need for their food. She teased that he might burst if he ate it all. Eugene had to act fast. He clutched his stomach, grimacing in sudden, theatrical pain. Panic swept through the servants as they watched their guest apparently succumb to a sudden illness. Eugene roared at them to get out, declaring he would handle his own meals in private from this moment on. Moran whispered that he should use his backstory, the hermit who lived in the mountains for decades, as the perfect excuse for his strange habits. By the next morning, the atmosphere had shifted completely. Kamar greeted him with a wide, respectful smile. Honoring him as the capable knight Eugene, Kamar laughed heartily, impressed that Eugene had rejected all the soft comforts he had tried to provide. But the peace was shattered when Raven stormed in, his loud voice grating against Eugene's morning mood. Then came Galadik, launching himself at Eugene for a bear hug, shouting about friendship and camaraderie. Eugene shoved the brute away, coldly telling him to stop clinging like a desperate child. Galadik just beamed, asking if they slept well, even as he complained that his face was still throbbing from Eugene's punch yesterday. He pointed to his bruised, swollen face and laughed loudly, asking Eugene if he could admire his handiwork. To Eugene, it looked like the man was practically begging for another beating. With overflowing enthusiasm, Galadik suggested they have another sparring match since the weather was so perfect. Soldiers and mercenaries swarmed around them, chanting for a fight, trapping Eugene in the spotlight. Eugene realized that Galadik didn't care about his lineage. The suspicions were fading, which was good, but this suffocating crowd was a heavy price to pay. Galadik continued his playful provocation, poking the sleeping dragon. Eugene warned that he looked ready for another hit, but Galadik just smirked, confident that the outcome might change today. Suddenly, the laughter died. The young boy Villied appeared behind them, his face a roadmap of fresh torture marks. In a weak, trembling voice, Villied asked if Eugene had been safe this whole time. The narrative shifts back to the darkness of the torture chamber, where a man in rags screamed, begging his master for mercy. Bertil Tion stood over the bleeding wretch, his face a mask of cold cruelty. He spat that none of this mess would have happened if the job had been done right. Bertil placed the blame squarely on the incompetence before him. He hissed that if the boy had just been killed in that cursed village, the red-eyed knight would never have set foot in Rose Castle. Bertil's eyes glowed with a terrifying blue mana. He screamed that his plans would have been flawless if not for this absolute failure. The subordinate tried to stammer out an excuse, shaking like a leaf. He claimed the mercenaries were supposed to be reliable, but they were unexpectedly wiped out by black wolves. Bertil scoffed, mocking him for not verifying the situation himself before hiring such fools. With brutal force, Bertil grabbed the man's face, asking sadistically if the eyes in his head were merely for decoration. As the subordinate stared in pure terror, Bertil decided that if those eyes couldn't see the truth, they were better off removed. Agonizing screams filled the dungeon as Bertil carried out his threat. Wiping his hands, he coldly asked himself how to fix this disaster. He realized he couldn't openly murder someone who had already infiltrated the castle and was seen by everyone. But then, a truly demonic idea sparked in his mind. He looked down at Villied, who lay broken on the floor. The dungeon expedition would be the perfect place to dispose of a corpse. The scene returns to the present, focusing on Eugene and the battered boy. Eugene instantly deduced the plan Bertil had ordered the boy to join the suicide squad for the dungeon opening. Villied sat in his room, utterly defeated. He admitted he had come here to die, wondering if the dungeon was simply his destined grave. Eugene brought up the mercenary attack on the village, dropping the bombshell that those third-rate killers were sent by one of Vili's own brothers. He forced the boy to face the cold, hard truth. They never intended for him to reach the castle alive. The realization plunged Vili deeper into horror and despair. But Eugene stepped closer, his gaze sharp as steel. He told the boy there was one way to cheat this inevitable death. The solution was simple yet brilliant. You must become my squire. Eugene looked the stunned boy in the eye. You are 16 now. You have completed your coming-of-age ceremony. His voice was firm. You need no guardian's permission. You are free to choose your own path. Eugene gave him a cruel but necessary ultimatum. There is no third option. Either stay frozen and let them slaughter you like sheep. He paused, or choose to fight until the very last breath leaves your body. The day of judgment arrived. The squad gathered before the colossal dungeon gate, which was bound tight with heavy iron chains. The seal was unbroken, meaning the horrors inside remained a mystery. No one knew what manner of beast waited in the dark. Commander Galadic took charge. Analyzing the massive structure, he laid out the battle plan based on the sheer scale of the gate. Expect fodder like goblins and kobolds, he barked. Maybe trolls or spiders. But his expression darkened. If a high-ranking calamity appears, we retreat instantly. Galadic roared the command to search the tunnels. The raid had officially begun. In the back, the porters whispered among themselves. They were relieved to be mere pack mules, praying their blood wouldn't paint the dungeon floor this time. One schemer whispered, I'll fake an injury once the small fry are dead. But his veteran partner sneered at him. You fool, he hissed. First raids are brutal. No one saves the rear guard. Do you want to die like a stray dog for a few copper pennies? The coward suggested running if things went south, but suddenly, a heavy blow struck him from the shadows, silencing him instantly. Bertil Tian emerged, a demon among men. He glared at the terrifying group of porters. Where is that bastard Vili? His killing intent was suffocating. I explicitly assigned him to this spot. He belongs among the luggage carriers. Do you mean that kid? A porter asked, trembling as he pointed a shaky finger. Bertil whipped his head around. There stood Vili, innocent as a lamb, handing a bag of snacks to Eugene. Please come back safe, the boy whispered. Eugene nodded solemnly. Bertil charged like a raging bull. You little rat, you sneaked in. He glared at the warrior. And you, ruthless barbarian. He got right in Vili's face, spit flying as he screamed. You are wasting time. This isn't a playground. His tone was commanding and cruel. Pick up your gear. Get to your death post immediately. Do not make me say it twice. When the boy froze in terror, Bertil lunged. Are you deaf, boy? He reached out to drag him by force. Eugene watched with hawk-like intensity. As Bertil's hand descended, a stronger force intercepted it mid-air. Thud! Bertil stared in shock. His hand had stopped dead. Eugene's fingers were wrapped around his wrist like a vice of steel. You intend to send a boy who has only held a kitchen knife into a pit of monsters? Eugene's voice was ice cold, condemning the man's cruelty. Eugene stared from beneath his mask, his eyes burning. Are you out of your mind? Bertil ripped his hand away, fury blazing. Insolent cur, I'm simply making my brother strong. It was a lie, and everyone knew it. He puffed up his chest, trying to assert dominance. Know your place. You have no right to issue orders regarding this child. No, Eugene interrupted, his voice cutting through the air like a blade. It is you who has forgotten your place here. Eugene dropped the bombshell. As of yesterday, this child is officially my shield bearer. Bertil stood stunned as Eugene raised his voice. Everyone here bears witness to this. This bond is iron stronger than blood, Eugene declared. He stepped closer, threatening Bertil directly. Touch a single hair on his head, and I will take it as a declaration of war. Eugene leaned into Bertil's face, his presence overwhelming. The challenge was unmistakable. A dark smirk formed under his mask. Shall we warm up our bodies right here before we enter the dungeon? Terror seized Bertil. He stumbled back, stammering. Who gave you permission to do such a thing? Adopting a bastard from another family? Bertil hissed desperately. This isn't simple. You will destroy the boy's future. But the surrounding warriors ignored him. With monsters like Eugene and Galadic, one whispered, this dungeon will be a graveyard for beasts, not us. Another nodded in awe. Did you see their duel? I would need a second life of training just to reach their ankles. Kamar stepped in, plastering a fake smile on his face to diffuse the tension. I, too, can entrust Sir Eugene with my brother. He lied smoothly. The boy is an adult now. The ceremony is complete. He has the right to choose his own path. Kamar finished. Bertil fell silent, but his eyes remained fixed on them, burning with venomous malice. Eugene knew the truth. Vili is prey, and once a predator marks the weak, survival becomes a brutal game. Hiding is useless. Even if you hold your breath, the predator will track you down and rip out your throat. Bertil's treacherous gaze proved it. Eugene turned to Vili, imparting a golden rule into his memory. "If you cannot be the strongest," he whispered, "then you must find a pack that is." Just then, the scout returned, perimeter clear. Galadic grinned, a savage hunger in his eyes. "Open the gates." He signaled the advance. The massive chains groaned, and the iron doors slowly parted. Abyssal darkness spilled out from the dungeon's maw, but fear was forgotten. The soldiers raised their weapons and roared, their battle cries signaling the start of the slaughter. Galadic turns to the rear guard, his expression grim. He delivers a final, bone-chilling ultimatum before they cross the threshold inside that abyss. Their survival is entirely in their own hands. With a deafening roar, the squad charges into the dungeon. Adrenaline surges as their battle cries signal the beginning of the assault. Echoing in their minds are the parting words of Kamar and Vili, a prayer for divine protection and a solemn promise to meet again in 4 days. But reality shatters their hopes instantly. The dungeon is a chaotic hellscape. Monsters rain down from the darkness above like a plague. They crash onto the soldiers, sparking instant panic. One unfortunate soul screams for salvation as blood spatters across the stone floor. Galadic steps in, his massive greatsword sings through the air, cleaving a beast in two. He desperately tries to wrestle control from the chaos. Rage blazes in the commander's eyes. He screams at the terrified men, calling them fools and demanding they hold their battle formation. Galadic barks orders at the archers. Return to the center, cover the ceiling. He commands them to unleash a volley, warning that a breach in the ranks means certain death. Terror seizes one soldier's heart. A crushing regret washes over him for volunteering for this suicidal nightmare. His worst fears have manifested. Convinced this is madness, he abandons honor and flees toward the entrance to save his own skin. He thinks he's found an escape route. But despair strikes. A pack of monsters blocks the exit, grinning maliciously. Just as death looms, a shadow intervenes. Eugene emerges with freezing cold eyes. He mocks the soldier, calling him a fool for thinking the retreat path would be left unguarded. Galadic violently grabs the deserter. He roars that the only safety lies within the group. He commands everyone to draw their blades and brace for the clash. Standing together is their only hope. Witnessing their pathetic display, bitterness fills Galadic's mouth. He wonders in bewilderment how he can possibly conquer a dungeon with such a ragtag group of cowards. The situation spirals. A soldier screams a warning of a second wave. Another cry of terror reveals the attack is coming from the rear. Galadic must think fast, ordering a formation change to fight on 2 fronts. Suddenly, Eugene steps forward. He announces he will handle the rear guard alone, ignoring Galadic's desperate warning about the danger. With the speed of a lightning bolt, Eugene vanishes into the suffocating darkness. Galadic stands frozen, stunned by the young man's impossible speed and unexpected boldness. Moments later, the sounds of violent slaughter echo from the shadows. Then, something comes flying out of the dark. Galadic gasps. It's Eugene's mask, realizing the battle has moved. He orders Bartek to cover his back and follow immediately. They sprint through the corridor, but shock hits them again. Eugene covered a vast distance in seconds, leaving a trail of monster corpses in his wake. They find Eugene standing calmly amidst the carnage. The intersection cleared. He holds a luminous flower, asking coldly if this glowing herb holds any value. Galadic arrives breathless. Meanwhile, Bartek feels a sarcastic disappointment. How can this powerhouse not know a common luminous herb? Galadic can only marvel. Despite the boy's ignorance of simple matters, his combat skills are nothing short of legendary. The herb withers in Eugene's hand. As the adrenaline fades, the corridor fills with the groans of the wounded receiving treatment for their bloody injuries. Eugene's men approach, arms full of loot. He orders them to pile the harvested magic stones before him. He gazes at the small pile in his hand with dissatisfaction. Is this meager amount all they yielded after such a slaughter? He orders the men to rest. Inspecting the stones, he notes they radiate a weak blue light, far different from the power he took from the Wanderer. The fairy Miriam materializes, staring at the stones with disdain. She notes they are trash compared to high-quality gems. She explains to Eugene that a magic stone's power is directly proportional to the monster's size and strength. Curiosity piqued, Eugene asks if wild wanderers naturally possess larger cores. Miriam shakes her head. Being a wanderer doesn't guarantee size. She reminds him that the crocodile he absorbed was a massive, freakish anomaly. She assures him that beast was a rare exception, hard to find. It was an entity powerful enough to usurp her own territory. Eugene realizes devouring that red stone was a stroke of divine luck. Miriam warns him entering dungeons to impress nobles is pointless if the rewards are this pathetic. As Miriam wonders if a boss monster lurks nearby, Eugene suddenly freezes. His senses flare. Something is coming. Meanwhile, Galactic bellows at the resting soldiers. He orders them back into formation immediately. Their moment of respite is over. Calling them weaklings, he announces that he and Sir Eugene will take the vanguard. He threatens that anyone who flees again will pay with their life. Eugene stares at Galactic, the irony of the situation tasting bitter on his tongue. This is his first dungeon dive as well. Yet, looking at the trembling mercenaries, he realizes a cold truth. He must take the lead, or they are all doomed. Galactic advances with bated breath, sensing a shift in the air. The killing intent ahead is leagues above anything they have faced. Galactic signals Eugene, the goblins were merely fodder. The true masters of this domain have finally arrived. Suddenly, heavily armed orcs emerge from the shadows. Galactic's instincts were right. These are mid-rank monsters at the very least. If such beasts guard the entrance, true nightmares must await them in the dungeon's depths. While the soldiers gulp down their fear, Eugene feels only a familiar hunger. His mind flashes back to the moment he devoured the Swamp Lord's crimson core. That power, that ecstasy. His eyes glow with a predatory red light. If he consumes another stone like that, what godlike power will he awaken next? Snapping back to reality, his senses expand. Over 50 enemies, 100 meters out, 3 colossal signatures loom behind them. Galactic grins, the thrill of battle igniting his blood. He looks at Eugene with a challenging smirk. Care to take the lead on this one? Eugene does not hesitate. The spear leaves his hand like a bolt of lightning impact. A monster's skull shatters instantly. Attack now. Galactic roars, seizing the chaos. Eugene becomes a blur of motion, a whirlwind of destruction tearing through the orc ranks. Inspired by his dominance, the soldiers charge with renewed fire. Should we help him? A soldier stammers, awestruck. But a massive shadow suddenly eclipses Eugene. A giant orc blocks his path. Eugene weaves through the attack like smoke. His blade flashes, a precise strike to the eye. The monster roars in agony. Eugene shows no mercy. He severs its limbs in a flurry of steel. With a final, thunderous thrust, he silences the beast forever. Blood rains down like a grim baptism on his face. This image would be burned into the soldiers' memories forever. The night they saw the true face of power. They expected a noble duel, a dance of chivalry, but this is overwhelming dominance. They see a figure of untouched dignity, unaware of the savage predator lurking beneath the mask. In that frozen moment, the soldiers realize the truth. The man standing before them is nothing like the knights in their storybooks. He is not a hero. He is a ferocious beast bathed in blood and death, terrified his allies more than his enemies. Silence falls over the corpse-strewn battlefield. The soldiers slump down, utterly broken. Galactic sees it in their eyes. It isn't just physical exhaustion. Their spirits have been crushed by witnessing Eugene's monstrous violence. To go further would be a death sentence for these men. We hit our quota. We should leave, Galactic urges, but Eugene turns, his gaze cold and heavy. I'm just getting started. To leave now would be to waste a feast of experience points. Galactic sighs but raises his voice to rally the troops. All right then, if the commander stays, we push forward, move out. No, Eugene cuts him off. Take the squad and leave, now. He will descend into the abyss alone, accompanied only by his personal mercenaries. The soldiers stare in shock. Realization dawns on Galactic. Eugene sensed their terror and spared them. A warm heart beats beneath that icy exterior. Watching Eugene fade into the shadows, Galactic smiles. That man is redefining what it means to be a true knight. Eugene and his mercenaries venture deeper, into a realm choked by thick spider webs. Terror grips young Raven. His torch hand trembles. Why me? He curses his wretched luck. He clings to hope. Sir Eugene can slay trolls. Surely he will be safe behind him. Crunch. A sickening sound echoes under his boot. He looks down nervously. A crushed spider. Horror washes over him. Suddenly, the darkness hisses. hundreds of crimson eyes ignite in the shadows as the swarm surrounds them. From the abyss emerges the giant cave spider, a nightmare that hunts in swarms, dissolving its victims with acidic venom before drinking them dry. Pure terror seizes Rabin as his scream tears through the air, the horde of monsters rushing toward them like a tidal wave of death. Commander Bartik shrieks in panic, begging for a retreat against the overwhelming odds, but Eugene shoots him a glare sharp enough to cut glass, asking with cold disdain what that word even means. In a blur of motion, Eugene launches himself into the fray like a living tornado, shredding through the arachnid bodies with effortless brutality. His sword moves faster than the eye can track, painting the cavern air with a mist of scattered monster blood. His eyes burn with terrifying confidence as he flashes a mocking smile, declaring their numbers mean nothing. Bartik orders Rabin to cover Eugene, but the soldier is barely surviving his own desperate struggle. While fighting on the front lines, Eugene's sharp senses catch the shadow of death looming over his subordinate. Raban screams for salvation, his voice cracking with absolute horror as the chittering swarm closes in on him. A massive spider descends from the darkness above, mandibles wide open to crush him, while Raban stands frozen, paralyzed by the grip of fear. But in a split second, Eugene intervenes. His blade flashes in a precise, devastating arc, cleaving the beast in two just inches before it could claim Raban's life. Raban stares up in shock and awe at his savior, overwhelmed by the towering, godlike presence radiating from Eugene's back. Having saved a life without breaking a sweat, Eugene finishes the kill with one final strike, leaving Rabin to stare in astonishment, wondering if the man standing before him is the true monster here. Rabin scrambles to his feet, unable to hold back his praise. He marvels at Eugene's legendary performance and suggests they head back, convinced they have already achieved more than enough for one day. He calls out to the commander for confirmation, confident that the battle has turned in their favor. But Bartik freezes, the blood draining from his face as a terrifying realization strikes him. Even amongst monsters, there is a hierarchy of power, and because the true rulers of the dungeon appear so rarely, foolish squads often forget to plan for their existence. Suddenly, a colossal leg slams onto the web, and Bartik knows with dread certainty that a size this massive signifies only one thing. The ruler of the nest has awakened the high-rank form of the giant cave spider. The Spider Lord reveals its gargantuan body, its glowing eyes burning in the dark, striking primal fear into the hearts of the soldiers. Bartik screams for an immediate withdrawal, his voice trembling as he suggests summoning the elite knight, Sir Galdic, but Eugene instantly rejects the cowardice. With eyes locked on the beast, Eugene coldly orders Bartik and Rabin to flee the area immediately. Eugene's eyes glow a menacing crimson red as he declares with savage hunger that this prey belongs to him and him alone. Bartik tries to respond, but he stammers, paralyzed by a strange and overwhelming pressure that forces his body to reject his own commands. His instinct to flee comes not from the giant spider, but from the terrifying predatory aura pouring off of Eugene. From the shadows, the fairy Moran observes the fleeing soldiers, noting that their survival instincts shattered simply because the gap in power between them and her master is too vast to comprehend. Eugene glances at his guide, asking if this Spider Lord compares to the Swamp Lord he previously devoured. Moran shakes her head, confirming that the monster before them possesses a strength far surpassing his previous foe. A dark smile spreads across Eugene's face as he realizes a stronger monster means a larger, more delicious magic stone to consume. He strides toward the colossal beast with arrogant confidence, taunting it to struggle and resist as much as it pleases. To Eugene, a treasure chest that is difficult to open only guarantees that the prize inside is worth the effort. The scene shifts to a peaceful garden, where a tiny spider lowers itself toward a teacup, only to be flicked away by Eugene, who now sits basking in the sunlight in a transformed state. It is revealed that the second ability he stole after devouring the Swamp Lord's stone is the power of camouflage. By manipulating the skin-hardening ability that acts as his armor, he has perfectly mimicked the texture and appearance of human flesh. Thanks to this evolution, Eugene has finally obtained the freedom to walk in the sun, saving him from the suspicious and tedious life of wearing a mask, as the guest politely asks why he has revealed his face today. Now, Eugene sits at a lavish banquet surrounded by nobility, where a lady teases him for hiding such a handsome face, while others clamor for tales of his dungeon conquests. The noblewomen whisper, with admiration about the rumors that he slew a giant spider single-handedly. While Eugene maintains a stoic silence, Moran hovers invisibly above, laughing hysterically as she notes that her master's energy is being drained faster by social small talk than by battle. The flirting intensifies as the ladies praise his otherworldly beauty, with one boldly wondering if he carries the blood of the elves. Eugene is internally horrified by the suggestion, realizing that being labeled an elf would only make his life more complicated and annoying. Suddenly, a knight slams his hand on the table, his eyes lighting up as if he has solved a great mystery. He proclaims that elven blood explains Eugene's supernatural vision in the pitch-black dungeon and his hearing that surpasses even wild beasts. The knight concludes his deduction with a piercing stare, certain that Eugene is not an ordinary human, while Eugene sweats nervously, desperate to keep his true monstrous nature hidden. The banquet hall erupted with noise as Galfredic hoisted his drink high, his voice booming over the chatter. Drunkenly marveling at Eugene's otherworldly beauty, he roared about elven bloodlines, ignoring poor Robin squirming in his suffocating embrace. With a slur in his voice, Galfredic jabbed a finger toward Eugene, genuine curiosity burning behind his hazy eyes. "How does a man with a face carved by the gods stay invisible?" he bellowed. "In these lands, such radiance is impossible to hide." Eugene merely shrugged, his voice calm. "I never sought to hide. Fate simply kept me in the shadows until now." The answer stunned the boisterous knight, while the noble ladies and young Robin flushed crimson at the raw charisma radiating from him. Galfredic guffawed, praising the silver tongue that charmed the room without a single falter or blink. But behind Eugene's stoic gaze, gears were turning. This man played the fool, yet his instincts were razor sharp. If suspicions ever arose again, perhaps the lie of elven heritage would be the perfect shield for his mysterious power. His mind drifted back to the dungeon, to the precise moment he had consumed the Mana Stone. It hadn't just granted him strength, it had shattered a lock within his soul, opening a gateway to the unknown. As the cursed tattoo vanished from his skin, a tsunami of foreign memories had crashed against his consciousness. He saw himself, not as he was now, but lying helpless in an alien world, a gentle hand anchoring him to reality. It was a strange, ethereal place where the mournful toll of bells rang out while unseen eyes watched his slumber. Who was the woman laughing in the haze? Was this truly his past, or a hallucination born of wild magic? The void in his mind remained vast. The only truth he possessed was a single name, Eugene. His introspection shattered as Robin's trembling wail pierced the air. "Sir Eugene." The boy's face was a mask of sheer terror, eyes pleading for salvation from the beast currently grappling him. Galfredic tightened his headlock, his scolding masked as rough play. "You dead weight, is this how you repay your savior?" Robin shrieked, desperate to justify his cowardice. "He's not human. Anyone sane would run from that power." "I only fled to survive," the boy cried, his voice cracking. "That wasn't a fight for mortals." Galfredic's grin turned feral. "Oh, calling our hero a monster now." He squeezed tighter, turning the lesson into torture. Eugene watched the chaos with icy detachment, grounding himself in the one fact he knew: I am Eugene. Yet, a new instinct pulsed in his veins, born from the recent bloodshed and revelations. If he hunted down the remaining tattoos and purged them like the last, the fog over his past would finally lift. Ignoring Robin's pathetic pleas for mercy, Eugene's eyes hardened. He would uncover his true self, no matter the cost. The scene shifted to the Lord's chambers, where victory over the dungeon had granted them an audience with Tion. Galfredic bowed low, his drunkenness replaced by noble grace. "Karima, third son of the Galfredic house, at your service, my lord." Eugene stepped into the light, his posture perfect, executing a respectful and fluid bow. "I am Jan, eldest of the Eugene family." Lord Tion nodded wearily, acknowledging the hell they had survived. The Lord signaled his servant, "You require proof of identity, a small price for saving my lands, though a warrior of your caliber hardly needs paper." Eugene accepted the document, the key that would solidify his new existence in this world. With this, he was officially Jan of House Eugene. He bowed again. "My gratitude, Lord Tion." While the fairy Moran cheered silently for their success, tragedy struck. A violent coughing fit seized the Lord, and his son Kamar rushed forward in panic. Tion's voice was a fragile whisper. "The ambition of your brother. It hangs on my soul, denying me peace even now. Father, please." Kamar gripped the dying man's hand. "I will protect this domain you built with your blood and sweat." The old lord tightened his feeble grip, his eyes locking onto his son's tear-streaked face for one final lesson. "Listen well. Land is but dirt and stone. A true ruler sees beyond the soil." "Do not look at the territory," he gasped, his final words echoing as Vili watched from the shadows. "Look at the people." The strength finally left the old lord's fingers, his hand slipping away. It fell limp against the sheets. The lord of the territory was no more. Eugene observed the room. He barely knew the man, yet the raw grief of the subject spoke volumes of Tion's legacy. But death is a mirror, and not every reflection showed sorrow. Eugene's gaze caught the second son, Bertil. There were no tears, only a mask of twisting rage and dark ambition. As the sun bled below the horizon, casting long shadows over the funeral, Galfredic prepared to depart. Kamar offered a sincere apology for departing at such a critical hour, but he knew Eugene understood the weight of their relentless schedule. Galadic turned to the young knight, asking if he truly intended to remain behind, to which Eugene responded with a gaze full of steely resolve. Eugene explained his plan to conquer the dungeon once more, refusing to let their hard-won entry go to waste after all the trouble they took to open it. A regretful smile touched Galadic's lips as he noted the misfortune, certain that Count Evero would have burned with desire to meet a warrior of Eugene's caliber. Then, without warning, Galadic extended a calloused hand toward Eugene. Beaming with a broad smile, Galadic declared it an absolute honor to have measured his strength against a powerhouse like Eugene, adding a prayer that they would never meet as enemies on the battlefield. Their hands locked firmly, a silent exchange of respect and recognition flowing between two formidable warriors. As Galadic rode off into the distance and Robin shouted wishes for a safe journey, Eugene immediately turned to Bardic and ordered him to prepare for their own departure. Villied blinked in total confusion, reminding his liege that he had just claimed he would be staying right here. With a knowing smirk, Bartik asked the squire what exactly Galadic was riding when he left. Villied answered simply that it was a horse, prompting Bartik to point a finger and lecture him that it is only natural for a knight to ride a proper steed. Bartik laughed heartily, explaining that their true destination was the merchant guild to liquidate their monster loot and purchase a warhorse worthy of Sir Eugene. Villied's eyes sparkled with renewed enthusiasm as the realization hit him, and he swore a solemn oath to serve Eugene with every ounce of his strength as a loyal squire. But Eugene shot him a look so cold it could freeze magma, stating clearly that he had absolutely no need for his help at this moment. Villied stood frozen, shocked and stunned to his core, whispering in a faint, trembling voice as he wondered what his master meant by those harsh words. The scene shifts to the sprawling metropolis of Marin, the largest trading hub in the kingdom of Kalor, a city pulsating with movement and life. Villied struggled under the weight of massive crates, sweat pouring down his face as a foreman screamed at him to move faster and quit slacking off. In the center of the bustling square, Robin stood like a town crier, boasting to the masses that a single knight had secured all these dungeon treasures. Pointing dramatically to Sir Jan Eugene, a buzz of electric excitement swept through the crowd as whispers spread about the legendary rookie. This was the knight who cleared the Tion territory dungeon and, as rumors claimed, had ripped the head off a troll while the beast was still breathing. Villied finally dropped his heavy load with a groan of exhaustion, while Robin barked at a greedy merchant to keep his hands off the premium goods. Outside the guild, Villied waited and stared at the imposing building, noting that the negotiations inside were dragging on far longer than expected. Inside, Eugene sat across from Merchant Belmore of the Balin Guild, who was practically vibrating with enthusiasm as he promised to take full responsibility for the materials. Eugene recalled his earlier skepticism when Bartik had claimed to know a reputable guild. As Belmore rambled on about the sheer scale of their operations, Eugene calculated that this connection would be invaluable, given his own lack of knowledge regarding human social networks. Suddenly, the atmosphere shattered as a dignified man sporting a monocle stormed toward the room. He kicked the door open with violent force, interrupting the conversation with the subtlety of a hurricane. Just moments before, Belmore had been offering Eugene the finest shipping rates and promising an exclusive contract thanks to his expertise. The imposing intruder demanded to know Sir Eugene's identity with a sharp tone, causing Bartik to whisper nervously that the situation had just become incredibly complicated. When Eugene asked why, Bartik explained that this man was the personal secretary to the deputy manager of the Balin Merchant Guild, meaning a heavyweight had entered the ring. Bartik leaned in closer, his voice laced with urgency as he continued his explanation. He clarified that this man, Secretary Gra, possessed far greater bargaining power than the lowly Belmore and was likely trying to hijack the deal for his own gain. Bartik offered a veiled piece of advice, his tone dripping with caution. He warned Eugene that if he wished to secure a stable trading partner in the city, he had better tread carefully and act with prudence. Belmore tried to intervene, stuttering that he was in the middle of drafting a contract with Eugene, but Gra shoved a hand into Belmore's face, silencing him with brute rudeness and mocking the fact that no official papers had been signed yet. Gra mentioned the wild rumors drifting from the port about a knight who tore a troll's head off with bare hands in the Tion lands. He acknowledged the mountain of materials before him, but his expression quickly turned to one of dismissal and skepticism. He scoffed, calling it a typical rookie strategy to spread unverifiable rumors to inflate the value of goods, claiming he could see right through such cheap tricks. With arrogant flair, Gra announced that the deputy manager wished to sign the contract personally and ordered Eugene to rise from this dilapidated room. Internally, Gra sneered, labeling Eugene a brute who knew only violence, confident he could strip the ignorant knight of everything he owned. But suddenly, Gra's features twisted in horror. His eyes bulged with primal terror as an immense, suffocating pressure exploded from Eugene's calm form. Eugene stared at him with eyes cold enough to freeze a soul, forcing Gra to feel the crushing weight of the true power standing before him. Cold sweat poured down Gra's face like rain, and his arrogance evaporated as he stammered a pathetic apology, introducing himself again with trembling respect. As secretary to the deputy manager of the Balin Guild, I assure you this is a golden opportunity for Sir Eugene. But Eugene's response was colder than ice. He demanded to know exactly what this so-called opportunity entailed. Grail stammered, confused by the hostility, trying to explain they offered superior rates for materials. But Eugene cut him off, his gaze sharp enough to draw blood, demanding the truth behind these better terms. The air grew heavy. Grail explained the deputy manager would handle things personally, but he froze when he met Eugene's gaze. One of Eugene's eyes glowed with a terrifying crimson light. The psychological pressure was crushing. Grail collapsed, gasping out apologies, terrified he had offended a predator. With a scream of pure terror, he scrambled out of the room, slamming the door and promising to return later, fleeing for his life. Belmore stared at Eugene, thick tears streaming down his face. He couldn't believe it. Sir Eugene had rejected a massive contract with the deputy manager just to protect him. Overwhelmed, Belmore pledged his eternal, unconditional loyalty right then and there. Wiping his eyes, he excitedly asked when they should begin the sales process. Eugene didn't waste a second. Immediately, he answered firmly. He ordered Belmore to follow him, leaving the merchant surprised by his swift pace. Meanwhile, at the opulent guild headquarters, Grail stood with his head bowed low before the deputy manager. He reported Eugene's rejection, desperate to justify his failure by claiming Eugene was no ordinary man, just as the rumors suggested. The deputy manager commanded him to raise his head. She noted that knights often created trouble to preserve their fragile sense of honor and face. A malicious smile curled her lips. "We are merchants," she declared. "We possess the true power of this world, money, and goods. Crushing a poor knight like Eugene would be child's play." She gazed out the window, spotting Eugene on the street below. He looked pathetic to her, a destitute knight who couldn't even afford a proper warhorse. She ordered Grail to return with a gift so extravagant, so valuable, that a penniless knight would have no choice but to accept it. Back on the street, young Villid was shocked when Eugene ordered him to stay behind. Eugene's voice was strict. He commanded the boy to sell the monster materials alongside Belmore. Villid's face fell. Sadness and confusion clouded his eyes. Was he being left behind because he was too weak, desperate? He offered to start sword training immediately. Eugene cut him off. "What is the role of a squire?" he asked directly. Villid answered with burning enthusiasm. "To support his knight in combat and in life." Eugene nodded. "Exactly," Eugene said calmly, his eyes holding a deeper meaning. "And right now, supporting my daily life means handling these commercial tasks." Eugene laid it out clearly. Villid's mission was to sell their battle spoils and raise funds. He was to learn the basics of trade from Belmore. With that, Eugene turned to leave. "He will be an excellent teacher for you in this field," he added. Villid felt the truth settle in his heart. Without Sir Eugene, he would have died long ago. Complaining about a simple task was shameful. Eugene noticed the shift in the boy's mindset. He offered a promise once they had funds. He would seriously consider teaching him the way of the sword. Eugene looked back at him, his expression serious. "The time will come," he assured him. "One day, you will stand by my side in battle as my true squire." Villid's eyes shone with adoration and fire. He placed a hand over his heart, accepting his lord's command with absolute sincerity. Eugene left the shop, but reality hit hard. After buying just minimal equipment, he was completely broke again. How did money vanish so fast? The fairy Moran fluttered around his head, grumbling loudly. My wallet is empty, so my heart feels empty too, she whined, begging him to find a quick way to earn gold. Suddenly, Eugene stopped dead in his tracks. He stared intensely at a display window showcasing a gleaming set of armor. Bartik gazed admiringly at the full-plate mail. Ah, the romance of every night, he sighed. Eugene raised an eyebrow. By romance, do you mean expensive? It's not just the price, Bartik corrected. That is a treasure even wealthy knightly families pass down for generations. But his contemplation was shattered by a loud scream. Boss! Robin sprinted toward them, panic written all over his face. He shouted the news a massive horde of wandering monsters had appeared on the outskirts of Marin City. He explained breathlessly that the beasts were storming from the eastern forest, and the local guilds were barely holding the line. Bartik's voice echoed in Eugene's mind. We should participate in this subjugation operation. Eugene's eyes went cold. Give me one good reason why. Robin answered with explosive enthusiasm, dropping into a fighting stance. Because unlike dungeons with owners, wandering monsters have no commission fees. His eyes sparkled with greed. Marin City is a merchant's paradise, he added, overflowing with gold. The capital wasn't just a city, it was a gold mine. The perfect hub to offload monster materials and loot at premium prices, with zero transport costs. Raban approached, his eyes practically glowing red with avarice. He summed it up in two beautiful words, huge money. The moment the word money hit Eugene's ears, his entire demeanor shifted. His orders were instant. We move, now. But just as they turned to leave, a desperate figure blocked their path, screaming, begging them to wait. It was Secretary Grail. Grail stood beside a magnificent beast, gasping for air, his chest heaving. Why, is everyone running so fast? Catching his breath, Grail beamed with pride. I came to deliver this warhorse, a personal gift from the deputy manager herself. Grail gestured to the steed's specs like a luxury car salesman. Silky black fur, muscles sculpted like marble, a thoroughbred of the highest lineage. Eugene paused, genuinely surprised. The deputy manager sent this, specifically for me. Suddenly, Grail saw that terrifying, predatory glint in Eugene's eyes. He stumbled back in pure fear, stammering, Well, we want nothing in return, I swear. Eugene ignored the secretary's panic and strode toward the beast. Grail frantically tried to emphasize that it was merely a token of their sincere intentions. With fluid grace, Eugene mounted the steed. He looked down, his voice calm. Convey my gratitude, to your mistress. The secretary stared up at him, struck speechless by his commanding presence. And then boom, Eugene tore away with explosive speed. Miriam squealed with overwhelming delight, screaming, Let's go collect that cash. Raban and Bartik stood frozen in the dust. Raban blinked, stunned. Did the leader just beat us to the loot? Bartik snapped, screaming at Rabin. Run, you fool, catch him. Grail remained behind, watching their chaotic departure in silence. Meanwhile, in the forest on the eastern outskirts of Marin City, hell had broken loose. A bloody clash raged between humans and a savage goblin horde. Suddenly, a thunderous sound pierced the forest silence, the rhythmic pounding of hooves. Eugene burst onto the scene atop his black steed. He didn't slow down, trampling the goblins in his path without a shred of mercy. His sword was a blur of high-level skill. Heads of monsters flew into the air, blocking his path no more. A spray of blood announced his arrival. Miriam instantly realized the gravity of the situation. The sheer number of goblins massive. The Marin Guild vanguard likely annihilated. A cold, unyielding shadow settled over Eugene's face, but this chaos worked perfectly in his favor. He drove his horse deeper into the forest. Fueled by a clear, selfish desire, he had no hobby of sharing loot. Every item here was his. The steed's hooves struck the earth with the force of a pile driver as he rocketed toward the heart of the battle at lightning speed. Through the melee, Eugene spotted him, a blonde knight, fighting ferociously against a sea of green skin, trying to hold back the tide. The knight roared in the monsters' faces. You demons, you won't take one more step unless it's over my dead body. But numbers overwhelmed courage. His horse stumbled, throwing him into the enemy ranks. Coughing blood, he tried to rise. I am a righteous knight. He swore by the name of Marin, but his bravado evaporated in an instant when, he realized he was completely surrounded. His features twisted into pure, unadulterated terror. He screamed at the top of his lungs, begging for help. for rescue from the certain death staring him in the eyes. At that critical second, Flash Eugene's sword descended like a thunderbolt, cleaving the goblin in two just before it could strike. Eugene stormed the siege. His blade moved with lightning speed, a whirlwind of steel slaughtering the monster circling them. Goblin limbs scattered in the wind. The knight stared, wide-eyed and amazed, at the savior who had materialized from the void. Eugene didn't stop. He fought with terrifying skill, pushing the danger back, widening their circle of safety with every swing. The knight smiled, a mix of relief and madness. "I owe you a big debt. What is your name?" But before he could answer, a goblin launched a treacherous sneak attack. Eugene intercepted, saving him once again. He looked down, his voice ice cold. "Is my name important right now? If we die here, everything is meaningless." And the knight burst into hysterical laughter. The truth of those words hit him hard. His crazed fighting spirit ignited once more. He stood tall, threatening the horde. "If we survive this living hell, I will ask for your name again." It was a fierce battle at the gates of the great merchant city, Moran. Hundreds of goblins poured in like ants, but the defenders fought to the last breath. In those moments of life and death, the unknown warrior cut down goblins without mercy, while the blonde knight fought back to back with him. In the end, their efforts were crowned with victory. The city had been defended. As the dust settled, whispers spread through the city. Who was he, the mysterious knight who saved them all? The blonde knight stepped forward, pride swelling in his chest. He announced the hero's name to the world. He is Jan Eugene. The city streets erupt with whispers of reverence. Tales spread like wildfire of the man who tore a living troll's spine from its body, cementing his status as their new savior. Chants of Jan Eugene echo to the heavens. But high above the celebration, a red-haired man with a thick beard observes the spectacle with cold calculation. It is Louis Valent, the former face of the Marin City Mayor's Guild. He mutters a dark prophecy under his breath. The higher this hero climbs, the harder the fall, and the harder he becomes to leash. Anxiety gripping him, Louis turns to his granddaughter, Priscilla. "Are you certain that leaving a variable like him unchecked is wise?" Her response is instantaneous and dripping with arrogance. "Grandfather, do not worry. Every piece is exactly where I want it on the board." A fox-like smile curls on Priscilla's lips. "Let Lord Eugene's legend grow. Let the world worship him." She explains the trap. A knight addicted to fame fears nothing more than irrelevance. Then, her eyes narrow. "You know about the boy he keeps close?" "Yes." Louis nods, confirming the intel. "The child Eugene claims to be supporting?" "He sells monster parts in that boy's name." But Priscilla leans in, lowering her voice to whisper a dangerous secret. "That isn't just a random orphan. That is the hidden, illegitimate son of the prestigious Tyan family." The revelation hits Louis like a physical blow. Priscilla connects the dots. Eugene isn't just hunting for sport. He is amassing a fortune to bankroll the return of a fallen noble house. Her mind works like a steel trap. If we keep them close, if we indebt them to us now, we won't just own a knight. We will have a direct line to the future head of the Tyan family. Louis burst into raucous laughter, struck by her brilliance. To buy the loyalty of the king's guard is to own the king himself. The mayor makes his move. I must send a gift worthy of such a hero, something to honor the man who crushed our monster problem. A reward so lavish, he cannot refuse. He grins at her. "And I shall list you as the benefactor. Let him know exactly who holds his leash." Priscilla thanks him, masking her ambition with grace. She sips her tea, the old proverb echoing in her mind, "The thirsty always seek the well." She has dug the well. Now, she simply waits for the prey to come for a drink. Footsteps echo in the hallway. Her gaze fixes on the door, sharp as a dagger. She will wait until he swallows the bait. Hook, line, and sinker. The door opens. Priscilla beams, greeting him with a practiced warmth. "Welcome, savior of Marin City." Eugene steps inside, clad in gleaming new plate armor. "I came to offer my gratitude," he states flatly. As the deputy manager of the Valen Guild, she gestures for him to take a seat. Over tea, her eyes scan him. It seems impossible that this handsome, refined face belongs to a monster capable of ripping a troll's head off. Her instincts scream one thing. This man is different. He is not like the other glory hounds she has manipulated. "The armor suits you," she purrs. "A gift from the mayor, crafted under my personal supervision at Moran's finest smithy." She sells the product. It is no ordinary steel. An alloy of L's iron and ghoul bones. Even the fangs of a dragon would shatter against this plate. She fishes for a compliment, but Eugene's reply is devoid of emotion. It will make the next dungeon raid efficient. The food and lodging for my mercenaries has also been adequate. Their condition has improved. I expect better performance. A calculated smirk plays on her lips. I am glad we could please you. She lies. Eugene nods. I will be sure to repay this kindness. Priscilla opens her mouth to close the trap, but Eugene stands up abruptly. I am busy. I must go. The sudden rejection leaves her stunned, her mouth hanging open. Walking to the door, he speaks over his shoulder. Once I clear the Tian family dungeon, we can discuss other matters. He does not even look back. My contract was for monster byproducts only. Consider this our final transaction. Priscilla bites her lip until it nearly bleeds. Eugene adds one final insult. I'm focusing on magic stones now. You have no use to me. As Eugene walks away, Priscilla screams suddenly. Wait. Eugene pauses. He turns slowly. Priscilla's voice drops, trembling with suppressed rage. Do we not have more to discuss? A crimson glint flares in the corner of Eugene's eye. What do you mean? The mask of the polite noblewoman falls away. Her eyes turn cold and predatory. Stop playing the fool. You know exactly what this is. She starts listing the debts. The finest full plate in Marin. A thoroughbred warhorse. A luxury suite. Gourmet banquets for your army. She slams her hand down. The trash you sold the guild doesn't even cover half the bill you owe us, Eugene. She pierces him with a glare sharp enough to cut glass, asking if he missed the childhood lesson that everything in this world has a price. Her tone implies a debt he can never repay. She presses the attack, questioning if he is some impudent knight with zero concept of honor. Does he truly not care if the citizens of Marin, who now worship the ground he walks on, find out he was merely exploiting their desperation? She mocks him with a venomous sweetness, calling him the hero of Marin, Lord Eugene. In response, he shoots her a side-eye cold enough to freeze hell over. Priscilla throws down the gauntlet, daring him to take the loot and run, challenging him to talk his way out of this trap. But Eugene's reaction shatters all her calculations. A terrifying, mocking smile twists his lips. He finds her pathetic little scheme amusing. Eugene instantly flips the script. He points out that she is the one summoning people on a whim, forcing unwanted gifts upon them, and then demanding payment for her own generosity. His eye ignites with a crimson glow as he steps forward. He dismisses her as nothing more than a merchant daring to intimidate a predator. A suffocating pressure descends on the room. The silence is so heavy it threatens to crush them. Everyone, even the veteran Bartik and Belmore, freezes under the sheer weight of his aura. Cold sweat begins to pour down Priscilla's face. Eugene lays out the facts before she can twist them further. He has already signed a contract with the Balin Merchant Guild through Belmore. As long as the transaction of goods is fair, he couldn't care less what the sheep of Marin whisper behind his back. He throws her own philosophy back in her face. If everything has a price, she can keep chattering all she wants. But he delivers a direct threat. As the deputy manager, she is about to learn exactly what it means to pay the price for offending him. Eugene continues his verbal assault, dissecting her strategy. He notes that her greed makes it look like the Balin Guild is conspiring with the city to trap the very knight who saved them from destruction. Then comes the final nail in the coffin. If this continues, he doubts any knight will lift a finger the next time Marin faces ruin. He declares he is finished here and turns to leave. Bartik steps in with a sly grin, clearly enjoying the show. He offers a mock apology to the deputy manager, feigning regret for how badly this situation has deteriorated. The gravity of her mistake crashes down on Priscilla. She realizes that if she had played this differently, she could have secured a legendary partnership. Belmore shoots her a nervous glance, and the realization hits her. She has completely lost control. Just as Eugene reaches the door, Priscilla's voice cracks. Trembling, she calls out, begging him to wait. She bows deeply, hand over her heart in total submission. She admits to her insolence and offers her deepest, most desperate apologies to Sir Eugene. She confesses that her greed for influence blinded her judgment. With sincere remorse, she apologizes for her disrespect and begs for a clean slate. She scrambles to offer a compromise. The contract with Belmore stands, but she adds a special clause ensuring the troubles Sir Eugene worries about will never come to pass. Priscilla watches him from her bowed position, her mind racing. She has seen countless knights who would crawl on their bellies the moment a sponsor dangled a little gold in front of them. Most are fools chasing money and fame, but this man, he is entirely different. He is a calamity she cannot afford to provoke. Her merchant instincts are screaming one thing. She cannot lose a connection to a monster like him, no matter the cost. Eugene pauses. He looks back with eyes that could kill, telling her he will listen. But his sharp glare warns that she better not waste a single second of his time. Priscilla smiles, relief washing over her. She thanks him profusely for his mercy and this final chance. Later, the scene shifts. Eugene rides his magnificent new steed while the fairy Miriam flutters around him. She admires his appearance, chirping that even if it is just for show, he looks absolutely majestic. Miriam fawns over her master, declaring him the greatest existence in the world. Beside them, Bartik grins broadly, noting that Eugene walked away with an incredible contract. Eugene agrees with a nod. Bartik explains that the Balin Merchant Guild is a titan in the industry. It is a force to be reckoned with, boasting headquarters in Marin and hundreds of branches spanning the entire Roman Empire. Bartik points to a map, emphasizing that trade with nobles who rule dangerous demonic realms, like the Teon family, is vital. He adds with admiration that a guild of this size offering unrestricted access to any dungeon or maze in their territory is a god-tier proposal. Honestly, Bartik considers this far more valuable than the official backing of a noble house. He praises Eugene's negotiation skills as nothing short of genius, but Eugene responds with an annoyed look, shattering the illusion. He admits the funny thing is, he didn't plan any of that. He only said those things because her attitude really pissed him off. Well, their conversation is rudely interrupted. A coarse, gritty voice mocks Eugene in his shining new armor, asking if polished plates make a man a knight. A massive, bald mercenary steps into their path, sneering at Eugene's pretty face and openly doubting he knows which end of the sword to hold. Eugene looks at him with cold contempt. Miriam chimes in, describing the brute as a potato-spouting nonsense. Just as Kamar arrives to witness the perfectly timed chaos, Eugene addressed him respectfully as Lord Teon, but Kamar, ever humble, insisted he drop the formalities. He marveled at how much the young master had evolved in the blink of an eye. When asked about the situation, grim news followed. His brother hadn't surrendered. Instead, he had recruited Fresh Blade's mercenaries. And Kamar sensed a trap. A heavy suspicion hung in the air regarding this new recruitment. Eugene recalled the filth his brother hired before to kidnap Villy. They were a corrupt bunch, rotten to the core. Scrutinizing the new group, Eugene narrowed his eyes. These new dogs reeked of the same foul scent as their predecessors. With grave seriousness, Kamar bowed. He formally implored Eugene to take command of this dungeon raid. Suddenly, a rough voice cut through the air. The bald mercenary leader sneered, ignoring protocol. He boldly asked if he would take the crown should Eugene perish inside. The knights gasped at the disrespect, but the thug shrugged, claiming he took no pleasure in saying it. After all, this wasn't a picnic. Dungeons were graveyards where lives were cheaper than flies. They had to prepare for the worst. Grinning like a wolf and baring his teeth, the mercenary claimed he looked forward to working with Commander Eugene. Eugene's expression remained frozen. He agreed effortlessly. Then, with a cold stare, he told him that if he died, the spot was his. "You can lead then, Baldy." The nickname struck a nerve while the thug fumed with rage. Eugene simply ordered the march to begin. Miriam darted through the air, whispering warnings about the bald man, but Eugene reassured her. He was already watching every move. He knew this was Bertiel's doing a clumsy attempt to use these mercenaries to assassinate him in the chaos of the dungeon. Stepping into the abyss, a thought amused him. Watching his brother's plans crumble before his eyes would be delightful entertainment. A terrifying, demonic grin stretched across his face as the shadows embraced him. Realizing the plan, Miriam cackled with villainous glee. Eugene launched himself forward. He became a whirlwind of death, shredding monsters with god-tier skill. Limbs rained down like confetti as he carved a bloody path without pausing for breath. Watching from behind, the bald mercenary stood paralyzed. The rumors of Eugene's monstrous strength were not exaggerated. Eugene was a one-man army, doing the work of 100 men while the mercenaries simply loitered in the back. He was an impenetrable shield, paving the way and absorbing every blow meant for the group. Frustration gnawed at the bald leader. He clutched a poison-coated blade. One scratch meant game over for Eugene. He just needed one moment. But Eugene was flawless. There were simply no openings in his defense. Suddenly, Eugene halted before a pitch-black corridor. He announced that only mid-rank horrors lay ahead. Safety was no longer guaranteed. With a glowing eye and a piercing stare, he issued a final warning. Let only those who wish to follow proceed. Only come if you are confident you can survive. Seeing his chance, the bald mercenary screamed at his comrades. How could they lag behind? He declared to himself that this was the golden opportunity to execute the kill. The mercenaries charged after him enthusiastically. However, Bartik and Robin wisely held back. Sensing the shift in the air, Bartik watched closely. He realized Sir Eugene wasn't just raiding a dungeon. He was orchestrating something different. Memories flooded Eugene's mind. He recalled his last raid with the mighty knight, Galdic. Without him, this was dreadfully boring. He pictured Galdic's imposing figure, the definition of an exceptional leader. A man who raised morale in the darkest hours and took the burden of danger upon his own shoulders. Regret washed over him. If Galdic were here, even these trash mercenaries might have been useful. He wondered curiously, how would the great knight have handled a mess like this? Enough was enough. Eugene dropped the clumsy act. His voice turned into absolute ice. He told the traitors who followed him, if you want to die, then proceed as you please. Miriam materialized instantly. Panic exploded among the mercenaries as the water spirit unleashed a barrage of lethal magic. Screams tore through the darkness as the men scrambled to dodge the relentless strikes. Chaos reigned supreme. The monster is using magic, one cried, blinded by smoke and agony. In the living hell, the bald leader roared at his men, terrified of friendly fire. Stop pushing, you fools. But the real reaper was Eugene. He began picking them off one by one. I can't see anything, a mercenary shrieked. The clash of steel rang out as the leader desperately screamed for a counterattack against the invisible threat. Suddenly, a mercenary froze. He noticed something truly terrifying. Is that person? Is he really our ally? Screams of horror answered him. My leg. It's gone. Eugene emerged from the gloom, eyes glowing crimson. Man or monster, it didn't matter. He was slaughtering them all. The bald mercenary froze. Darkness swallowed him whole. He was completely cut off. Desperate, he fumbled for a magic stone. Light. He needed light. He cursed the suffocating blackness that shouldn't be there. Group up, stay together, he roared, but only silence answered him. A dead, heavy silence. Terror clawed at his throat. Why couldn't he hear a single sound? Footsteps echoed. Eugene emerged from the shadows like a phantom. Do you need a little light? His voice was ice cold. You seem to be in a bind. Let me give you a hand. Can you see clearly now? Eugene asked, his sarcasm dripping with malice. The mercenary's blood ran cold. The horrifying truth slammed into him. The roles had reversed. He wasn't the hunter anymore. He was the prey. Eugene smiled a savage, predatory grin that bared his fangs. Trembling, the mercenary whispered the only words left to him. You. Monster. Later. The door slammed open. Kamar burst into Eugene's room, breathless. Is it true? Tell me the news isn't true. Kamar and his brother, Burle, rushed to the scene, but they froze in their tracks. Maverick, the mercenary, lay on the ground, a pathetic, bloody mess. Burl's eyes went wide. Maverick! He screamed the name of the man who was supposed to be his strongest weapon. This couldn't be happening. Maverick lifted his face, his eyes swimming with absolute despair. I tried to kill Jan Eugene. His voice trembled with fear. Before Burl could even process the failure, Maverick dropped the bombshell. It was him Burl Tayon ordered the hit. Cold sweat exploded over Burl's skin. He's crazy, Burl shouted, frantic to salvage his image. This man has lost his mind. Kamar turned on his brother, rage boiling over. Burl, just how far are you willing to go? Shut up, Burl snapped, desperate to deflect the blame. Wake up, Kamar. Are you really going to believe the ravings of a lunatic? Burle loomed over this prone mercenary, his eyes burning with a silent threat. Stop spouting nonsense, he hissed. Speak clearly, if you value your life, But inside Maverick's mind, a war was raging, a terrifying battle for control. His eyes flashed a sinister crimson. How? He gasped, terrified by his own thoughts. How dared I try to harm the master? It was unnatural fear, absolute domination. I am useless, I deserve death. Screaming in agony, Maverick bolted toward the window. Stop him, Burl cried out, reaching for him. But it was too late. Maverick hurled himself into the void. A sickening crunch echoed as he was impaled on a statue below. Kamar stared down from the balcony, his face pale with horror at the gruesome sight. Burl didn't miss a beat. He seized the opportunity instantly. See, he was clearly insane, Burl sneered. The monsters drove him mad. He saw men torn like paper. It broke his mind. Burl insisted, believing his lies is ridiculous. But Kamar saw something that chilled him to the bone. There was no shock on Burl's face, only relief. The witness was dead, and Burl was glad. Suspicion hardened into certainty. Sensing the mood shift, Burl went on the offensive. He turned his fury toward the only other target. He pointed at Eugene. You put these delusions in his head. You dare attack my reputation, my pride as a knight. Eugene didn't flinch. His voice cut through Burl's shouting like a blade. Are you truly innocent? He asked, his gaze piercing. On your honor as a knight. Burl stiffened. Suppressed rage vibrated in his voice. I am. Good. Eugene smiled coldly. He played his trump card. Since you bet your honor and your truth on it, I formally request a trial by combat. The words hung heavy in the air. Burl stood frozen, stunned. He was backed into a corner with nowhere to run. The sun began to set, painting the castle in blood-red hues. Rumors spread like wildfire. Everyone was whispering, the second young master, an assassin, a duel for the truth in the front courtyard. From the maids to the soldiers, the castle buzzed with tension. Burl crossed the line this time. They murmured. Who was the target? The answer walked into the courtyard. Eugene appeared, clad in full combat gear. The realization hit the crowd. It was the Lord's new knight. Sir Jan Eugene stood like a statue. His hand gripped the hilt of his sword. His face was a mask of cold rage and tightly wound tension. The referee's voice boomed. The claims conflict, steel will decide the truth. The winner carries the will of the Lord. Eugene drew his blade with terrifying calm. Victory belongs to the righteous. The signal dropped. Roaring, Burl charged with a massive frontal strike. Oh! The referee declared the start, and chaos erupted. Clang. Eugene blocked the strike with ease. Swords locked in the center of the square, steel grinding against steel. Sparks showered around them. Burl attacked like a wild beast. Strike after savage strike. He wanted to end this instantly. He poured every ounce of his strength into the blade. Veins bulged on Burl's face. He had to break Eugene's defense. But in the midst of the storm, Eugene's mind drifted. Memories of a past life surfaced. He remembered Burl screaming about vampires, calling for the Holy Knight. Sir Lim Deerhite. Internal rage simmered in Eugene. To think he had been hunted for 10 years. By someone this weak, it was a joke. The atmosphere exploded. A violent confrontation had truly begun. Steel shrieked against steel, sparks dancing wildly in the air. Shock twisted Bertiel's face as the terrifying truth hit him. He was hopelessly outmatched by his opponent's speed. Eugene pressed the advantage with a crushing sweep. The heavy blow smashed into Bertiel's guard, forcing a strangled cry of pain from his throat as he stumbled back. A storm of steel followed instantly. Eugene deflected every strike with bored ease, then launched a piercing thrust that shattered Bertiel's stance completely. Clang. The sound of defeat rang out as Bertiel's sword slipped from his trembling grasp and hit the dirt. Eugene loomed over him like a reaper, eyes cold and terrifying. With utter contempt, he commanded the fallen noble to pick up his weapon, while Bertiel shook with a mix of agony and shame. In his mind, Eugene dissected the battle. He had to admit, Bertiel's swordsmanship itself wasn't terrible, but the chasm in raw power was absolute. It was so obvious that even the untrained commoners watching could feel the crushing difference. Jan Eugene wasn't just winning, he was a natural disaster. The Lord's brother never stood a chance against such overwhelming destruction. A flash of silver and blood sprayed the air as Bertiel's hand was severed. Suddenly, a desperate roar cut through the chaos as Kamar screamed for them to halt. Eugene turned, a look of pure annoyance on his face. He warned Kamar to back off, his aura flaring as he declared the duel far from finished. But Kamar rushed forward, his voice trembling. He refused to stand idly by and watch his own flesh and blood be slaughtered. With Bertiel maimed and unable to prove his claim, the duel was over. The victor was undeniably Sir Jan Eugene. But on the ground, Bertiel was unraveling. Kneeling in a pool of his own blood, he shrieked like a madman, vowing to tear Eugene's throat out with his bare teeth. Kamar grabbed him firmly, begging him to stop. The outcome was set in stone. There was no point in struggling anymore. He implored his brother to show a shred of knightly honor, confess the sin, accept the prison cell, and at least keep his life. Bertiel snapped completely. He screamed at his brother to shut his mouth, unable to comprehend why the universe was punishing him. Then, his bloodshot eyes locked onto Eugene. He roared his name in venomous hate, blaming the stranger for ruining his life and dragging him into this abyss of humiliation. Consumed by madness, Bertiel lunged for one final, desperate strike, but Eugene was already moving, faster than a blinking eye. Bertiel blinked in confusion. Why? Why wasn't his body moving? Why did the world feel so strange? His vision spun as his head hit the dirt. Staring across the cobbles, he saw a headless corpse collapsing. Eugene had severed his neck in a single, merciless breath. Eugene stood over the remains, his voice sharp as ice. He muttered that the fool should have taken the mercy his brother offered while he still had a head. Without a backward glance, Eugene turned and walked away, leaving the broken legacy of Bertiel rotting in the square. The crowd stood in stunned silence. Kamar could only stare at his fallen brother with tear-filled eyes, whispering a final, sorrowful goodbye to the fool. Later, the castle corridors echoed with Eugene's footsteps. Miriam floated beside him, asking if his actions earlier were a waste of resources. When Eugene raised a brow, she clarified. She meant Maverick, the mercenary he had turned into a vampire thrall, only to discard him like trash. Eugene shook his head. That man was mentally fragile from the start. He never had the fortitude to handle the dark transformation. Leaving him alive was a liability. It would have been too easy for someone to discover his true nature as a vampire. Ultimately, Maverick was just a disposable pawn, a convenient tool used solely to drag Bertiel into that trial by combat. Eugene's eyes narrowed. Did she really think he would spare a dog that tried to bite him? Miriam sighed, noting that such ruthlessness was expected of a bloodless monster. She argued that a true vampire lord should parade countless slaves as a testament to their overwhelming power. But when Eugene dismissed the idea, she rolled her eyes, mocking him for having absolutely no sense of style or grandeur. As he pushed the door open, Eugene scoffed internally. Weaklings required too much cleanup. If only there was at least one person worthy of his liking. A specific face from his memory surfaced, someone he actually admired. Suddenly, a voice from the room cut through his thoughts, mentioning the name Galadic. Eugene didn't hesitate. He strode into the room, finding Priscilla sitting in deep conversation with Belmore. Priscilla was pressing for answers about Galadic's timeline. Belmore, clearly sweating, stammered that, despite the chaos, 2 full weeks had already passed. Their conversation died instantly. Both Belmore and Priscilla froze, shocked to see Eugene standing there like a ghost. Recovering quickly, Belmore bowed warmly. He poured out congratulations for Sir Eugene's magnificent success in conquering the dungeon yet again. Eugene brushed the pleasantries aside with a sharp nod. His voice was tight with urgency as he demanded to know what happened to Sir Galadic. Priscilla's expression darkened. She explained that 2 weeks ago, Galadic had joined a raid to subdue a maze in Count Evero's domain. Then came the heavy blow. He had vanished inside that labyrinth, completely alone. They had scoured the entire sector inhabited by mid-rank monsters, but he was gone. Not a single trace remained. Her voice dropped to a grim whisper. The only explanation was that he had ventured into the high-rank zone and never came back. The scene shifted to an opulent palace. An elegant nobleman greeted Eugene, eyeing him with curiosity. The rumors hadn't done justice to how young and striking the hero actually looked. Eugene thanked his host, Lord Giffian, for the hospitality. However, his eyes remained serious. He was there for business, not flattery. Giffian Evergrow, the heir to the family, simply smiled. With a graceful gesture, he invited the young warrior inside to discuss the darkness that lay ahead. Giffian sighs with feigned regret, explaining that Sir Galedford's ambition had finally crossed a line, as they had promised him a title upon success, but never imagined he would dare challenge the upper floor solo. Eugene stands there, stunned, his voice trembling as he repeats the word, alone, in utter disbelief. Giffian confirms the grim reality, revealing that the upper floors Gallic breached are forbidden zones the Evergrow family hasn't dared to touch for over 100 years. His voice drops to a conspiratorial whisper as he adds that those floors are the domain of the legendary Maze Master. A subordinate steps in to clarify, explaining that this Maze Master isn't merely a beast, but a supreme entity that controls the very laws of the dungeon itself. The man continues his scathing report, pointing out that Gallic was blinded by the desperate need for merit. He claims that in his greed, the knight made a reckless move that has now brought disaster upon them all. Jifian gestures to the man speaking, introducing him as Sir Lugatz, a territory knight who had led the subjugation squad alongside Gallic back in the day. Lugatz greets Eugene with a serpent-like smile, mentioning he heard rumors of Eugene defeating Galadic in a duel, and notes with amusement that the two share an uncanny resemblance. With arrogance dripping from every word, Lugatz announces he is the current champion of the Evergrow tournament, implying he crushed Galadic there as well, making them equals in victory. Eugene stares him down, his eyes icy as he asks if measuring ego is really the priority right now. Jifian glosses over the tension, stating that this rivalry only proves Galadic's value to the house, before offering an apology that reeks of fake sincerity. Eugene cuts to the chase, demanding to know Galadic's current status. He emphasizes that they aren't just acquaintances, but brothers in arms with a deep bond. While Eugene internally curses these bureaucratic snakes, Jifian adopts a serious mask, promising full support to a friend who traveled so far and asks for his absolute attention. Jifian reveals the dark history their family has attempted to conquer the upper floors countless times over the last century, but the result was always total annihilation. Because of this blood-soaked history, their policy is absolute and unforgiving. They are forced to end all search operations and declare anyone missing for more than a month legally dead. Jifian locks eyes with Eugene, explaining that 3 weeks have already vanished since Galadic disappeared. If he isn't found within the final week, all hope is lost. Eugene shoots up from his seat, aura flaring, and declares he is moving out immediately. Jifian hurriedly tries to placate him, explaining that this hellish maze isn't a place one simply strolls into like a village market. He informs Eugene with a heavy tone that Sir Lugatz will need exactly 3 days to assemble a proper subjugation team. He advises Eugene to rest and preserve his strength until then. Eugene, after a moment of silent calculation, agrees and offers his thanks, but Jifian raises a finger for one final condition. He mentions he has recently contracted a witch and insists she accompany the mission, assuring Eugene that her dark arts will be vital for survival. The scene shifts to the bustling city streets, where Moran is fuming, grumbling furiously about Lugatz and calling him a pointy-headed fool with the manners of a goblin. She screams in frustration, venting her rage to the open air. She insists that while she and Eugene might look eccentric, they are beings of immense power, and threatens to incinerate Lugatz's giant nose, though Eugene walks ahead, ignoring her tantrum. Eugene walks in silence, sinking into a deep ocean of thought. His instincts are screaming that the logic doesn't hold up, and he recalls Galadic's parting words with crystal clarity. He remembers Galadic explicitly stating he would receive his official appointment from Count Evergrow after the campaign, and had even invited Eugene to come along for the introduction. Confusion swirls in Eugene's mind like a storm. Galadic had confirmed the title was his and was traveling to the territory specifically for the ceremony. So why, in the name of the gods, was he suddenly thrown into another suicide mission in the maze? Eugene knows the man's soul. Galadic would never be blinded by cheap greed, and if he did enter the maze, he would have led a disciplined team with extreme caution. But his train of thought is violently severed by the sound of screaming and commotion erupting nearby. Eugene turns his gaze to see a masked figure shouting to the gathering crowd, preaching madness about a messiah descending to save them. The fanatic continues his passionate sermon, warning of a prophecy where a red shadow stains the moon, incurring the goddess of victory's wrath and dooming the land to destruction. The man proclaims that the apocalypse has already begun, pointing frantically towards the horizon. He cites the frequent tremors shaking the earth near the maze, which have caused monsters to perish in massive numbers. He then drops a piece of information that makes Eugene's eyes narrow. A skilled knight recently went missing inside the abyss. Moran leans in, whispering to Eugene that this matches the story those weirdos at the palace were spinning. The cultists scream for blood, demanding the people sprinkle fresh calf blood at the gate and offer meat sacrifices, promising the Messiah will arrive only after the land is stained crimson. A bystander mutters, wondering if this is some twisted religious cult. Moran looks confused by their lunacy, but Eugene's sharpened intuition tells him the atmosphere in this village is suffocatingly wrong. Suddenly, one of the followers slides up to Eugene and presses a leaflet into his hand, warning him of divine punishment and urging him to convert before the end comes. Eugene scanned the leaflet, his eyes narrowing at the reports of monster deaths. Something wasn't adding up. Had the maze itself crumbled? If the walls had breached, beasts would be flooding out through the cracks. But if that were true, why did Gallic vanish without a trace? A spark lit in Eugene's eyes. He barked an order to Moran. "Prepare to move. We're heading to the maze." "Now." She blinked, caught off guard by his sudden intensity. 3 days, Eugene scoffed. I'm not waiting 3 seconds. He clenched his fist, aura flaring. He would tear the maze apart himself if anything stood in his way. But then, a voice slithered from the shadows behind him. Well, a vampire here. Eugene froze. His eyes widened as the presence washed over him. A cloaked figure stepped forward, a twisted smile on his lips. He sneered. I thought the holy knights hunted your kind to extinction. The stranger leaned in, mocking him. Yet here you are, strolling under the burning sun like a human. How bold. A preacher raved about the Messiah nearby, but Eugene tuned him out. In a blur of motion, he snatched the stranger and dragged him into the alley. Slam. He pinned this figure against the cold stone wall with bone-crushing force. Eugene's gaze was murderous. Who are you? He hissed, his face inches from the stranger's. And how did you see through my disguise? His grip tightened like an iron vice against the man's throat. Speak, or I snap your neck right now. The stranger gagged, clawing desperately at Eugene's hand. Air rasped in the stranger's throat. Blood. Shadows. He wheezed. I belong to the blood shadows. The name struck Moran like a bell. A buried memory surfaced. Her eyes went wide, and she let out a piercing shriek. The truth hit her like a lightning bolt. She darted forward, grabbing Eugene's arm frantically. Stop, Eugene. Don't kill him. You have to stop. He's a mage, Moran cried, her voice trembling with panic. Eugene paused, his killing intent wavering. The blood shadows aren't enemies. They're an ancient lineage of mages sworn to serve the vampire nobility. But as the explanation poured out, the mage went limp. The chokehold had done its work. Moran sighed, her shoulders slumping. And she's out cold. Moments later, the witch snapped awake. Fury blazed in her eyes. You brute! How was I supposed to answer when your hand was crushing my windpipe? Eugene stammered, actually looking embarrassed for the first time. Moran crossed her arms. To be fair, you sounded pretty evil back there. The witch huffed, straightening her cloak and regaining her composure. I am Serenoa. Serenoa, my lineage allows me to sense your kind instantly, she explained. Her tone shifted to reverence. It is an honor to stand before a true descendant of the dark clans. In fact, she added, young Master Jiffian sent me to find you. It clicked. This was the contact Jiffian had spoken of. He told me you and Sir Gallic share a soul-deep bond, she said earnestly. Eugene twitched. I am going to sew that man's mouth shut, he vowed internally. But Sarno's expression darkened. I didn't just come to greet you. I was there. During the exploration campaign, I saw the moment Sir Gallic vanished. Eugene's demeanor sharpened instantly. Tell me, everything. Serenoa began her tale. I joined Count Evergrow's expedition. I needed rare monster reagents, and the maze seemed worth the risk. The Evergrow Maze, a place legendary for its peril. It had been cleared 100 years ago. We thought the upper floors were safe. We were arrogant. Deep inside, the world turned upside down. A massive quake shook the very foundations of the maze. The floor beneath me disintegrated. I stared into the abyss, gravity pulling me down into the dark. But a hand grabbed me. Sir Gallic threw me to safety and took my place in the void. I can still hear his voice, she whispered. He called me a fool. He screamed about a door down there as the darkness swallowed him. The others were blind, Sarnoa said bitterly. They claimed Sir Gallic triggered the quake by opening a forbidding gate on the upper floor, but he saved my life. I owed it to his memory to find you and speak the truth. She eyed Eugene. I never guessed his close friend was a vampire. Eugene frowned. Jiffian's intel was messy. Was he lying or just incompetent? Or Serenoa cut through his thoughts with a terrifying whisper. There is one more thing. Something I saw before the darkness took him. Her voice trembled. In that bottomless abyss, a single, massive eye stared back at me. Eugene went cold. An eye. Serenoa nodded slowly. Fear etched on her face. Something ancient was awake down there. Serenoa breaks the silence, her voice trembling. She reminds him of the ominous leaflets the strange cultists were distributing in the square earlier. She points a shaking finger at the maze wall. The eye symbol carved there is identical to the one on the leaflet, triggering a flashback to the cult's twisted rituals. A nightmare comes to life in their minds. The high priest screams into the void, demanding fresh blood and raw flesh as a sacrificial offering. An innocent victim is dragged onto the cold altar. They are slaughtered to welcome a so-called savior who promises them false salvation. In the consuming darkness, a sinister face cracks a wicked smile. He mutters an ancient incantation, promising that something terrible is about to ascend. Back in the realm of the living, the city square bustles with activity. Workers roll heavy supply barrels, preparing for a long siege, until a voice booms out. The preparations are complete. Mercenary volunteers and Holy Templar knights stand shoulder to shoulder, signaling they are ready to march immediately. Eugene stands silent amidst the chaos. His gaze is fixed on the towering gate of the maze, a mouth waiting to swallow them whole. Lugat sidles up to him, his tone dripping with false concern. He asks if Eugene is excited to reunite with his friend, adding he hopes they won't be carrying a corpse back home. Eugene shoots him a cold look. He corrects the noble instantly, stating that Galadic is not a man who dies easily. Lugat bursts into boisterous laughter, loudly agreeing about Galadic's reliability. Internally, Eugene scoffs. If it were up to him, he would have stormed this maze ages ago. But a shadow hangs over his thoughts, recalling that cursed eye symbol. Eugene realizes Galadic's disappearance was no simple accident. It was a calculated trap. Eugene decides then and there he must watch this Lugat character like a hawk. Memories of their battles flood back. Galadic has survived 3 weeks in that hell, surely. The sturdy brute can last another 3 days. Suddenly, his thoughts are interrupted. A group of masked figures approaches, bowing respectfully before him, catching Eugene off guard. They introduce themselves as Templar Knights, elite warriors from the monastery within the Evergrow territory. They express their immense honor. They believe they are standing before a pious, devout knight of the faith, Sir Eugene. Their leader continues the praise. He claims they were moved by Eugene's willingness to face death for a friend, inviting him to join their holy cause. They ask to fight together in the name of God. Meanwhile, Miran whispers in his ear, dripping with sarcasm about calling a vampire pious. Eugene maintains his composure. He answers coldly, simply telling them to perform their duties to the best of their ability. As Eugene walks away, Lugat chimes in. He notes how rare it is for God's chosen Templars to fawn over a mere ordinary knight. Lugat takes the jab further. He suggests with a smirk that Eugene should consider changing his class to Holy Knight. Eugene pictures it sarcastically, Vampire Holy Knight. A ridiculous thought. His expression instantly hardens back to seriousness. He summons Bartik, the mercenary captain. Eugene issues a set of rapid, precise instructions before they move out. Deep inside the maze, the atmosphere is tense. Commanders order a brief respite for water, but warn the soldiers never to lower their guard. Mirian flits around the internal waterfalls, awestruck. She marvels at the stunning water energy, while Eugene scans the area in silence. His eyes analyze every detail. This is no natural dungeon, it is an artificial space. Survival is possible here, especially with so few monsters present. Eugene considers the implications. If the environment is controlled, then the worst case scenario might be avoided. A skilled warrior could indeed hide and survive in this labyrinth for a long time. Lugat turns to him, his voice smooth. He remarks that this place is a perfect breeding ground for evil to lurk and thrive, asking for Eugene's take. Without waiting for an answer, Lugat pivots. He praises Eugene's leadership, noting that miraculously, not a single soul has died on the march here. Eugene ignores the flattery. He demands to know exactly how much farther it is to the spot where Galadic vanished. Lugat's smile turns predatory. He tells Eugene not to be so impatient, reminding him of his own words about trusting Galadic. Eugene and Moran glare at him daggers. Lugat boasts with sickening overconfidence that Eugene should trust him, claiming the Evergrow family has already mapped every trap. Eugene forces a sarcastic smile. He points out a glaring contradiction in Lugat's bold claims. If you know the traps, why do people die every time? Lugat lets out a faint, wicked chuckle. A demonic glint ignites in his eyes. He whispers the truth. Those deaths weren't accidents. They were sacrifices offered to ensure a safe passage. Rage flares within Eugene, his eyes glowing a menacing crimson as he stares down Jafai and Lugat. Suddenly, his instincts scream. The earth violently convulses, boulders crash down from the ceiling, sending the soldiers into a panic, terrified that the dungeon is collapsing. Lugat screams over the roar. He announces that the very structure of the maze has begun to shift and transform. He points to a colossal wall grinding into motion with complex gears. He confirms to Eugene, this is the place we've been waiting for. Giant gears turn with a deafening grind, shifting the walls to reveal a hidden path. Lugat explains that this volatile zone is the only shortcut to the upper level. Debris rains down around them. Serenoa calls out to Eugene, amazed that the chaotic earthquake has actually opened a path forward. Eugene locks eyes with Lugat amidst the dust. He demands to know exactly where this alleged shortcut is located. Lugat's lips curl into a sinister grin. He points a finger directly at Eugene. The path is right where you are standing. The screech of grinding gears shatters the silence. The earth itself splits wide open beneath Eugene's feet. This is no natural earthquake. Eugene realizes instantly it is a stage trap. The very same snare Lugat used to frame Knight Galadict. Before Eugene can deduce Lugat's endgame, a piercing scream rings out. The witch Serenoa points a trembling hand toward the shadows, paralyzed by fear. Eugene's eyes go wide, shock instantly boiling into blinding rage. There, crucified on a stone platform, lies his friend Galadic bound, broken, and drenched in blood. Like a bolt of lightning, Eugene dashes forward. He desperately checks his friend's pulse. He is still alive, but barely. Every second counts. Eugene knows he must liberate him and begin treatment immediately, or all will be lost. But the fairy Moran cries out in panic. Master, something is wrong. She senses a twisted, alien energy radiating from the abyssal depths. A violent gale suddenly sweeps through the chamber. Serenoa scans the darkness, dread pooling in her stomach. Where is this coming from? In the pitch-black void, two glowing eyes snap open. A massive beast emerges, draped in a terrifying aura of purple death. Boom, boom. Its heavy footsteps make the entire cavern tremble. Serenoa freezes. It is a minotaur. How can such a calamity be here? But Eugene does not hesitate. Protect Galadict, he commands, charging straight into the jaws of danger. Eugene leaps across floating debris to reach the beast's head, but just as he strikes, the monster retaliates with a thunderous blast, launching him backward. The impact sends Eugene hurling through the air. He crashes violently into the ground, pain racking his body. The Minotaur towers over them, unshakable. Its massive weapon pulses with dark energy, poised for slaughter. Eugene struggles against the wall, eyes locked on the beast. But the Minotaur ignores him, raising its weapon to crush the helpless Galadict. Adrenaline explodes. Eugene sprints madly, desperate to intercept the blow before his friend is reduced to paste. He reaches out, screaming Galadic's name, but suddenly, a magic barrier slams down, cutting off his path. Eugene roars in confusion and fury at this madness. It is Serenoa. She stands firm behind the barrier. Stop. That is a high-ranking Minotaur, an elite among monsters. If you face it head-on like this, she screams desperately, even a vampire will face certain death. Eugene whips around, leveling his blade at Serenoa's throat. His eyes glow with a lethal, unrestrained fury. You, he snarls, voice dripping with ice, have just crossed the line. Serenoa trembles, but she does not back down. I am sorry, but I will not stand idly by and watch a vampire run to his doom. Attacking blindly guarantees defeat. If you truly wish to save Sir Galadict, you must assess the situation with cold logic, right now. She turns her gaze to the beast in disbelief. How is a Minotaur even here? This maze shouldn't it be large enough to sustain one? I thought the worst we would face was a Cyclops. Eugene ignores the logic, glaring around the cavern. The air crackles with electric tension and his suffocating killing intent. Suddenly, a sarcastic voice cuts through the chaos. Oh, I didn't know the witch was so skilled in earth magic. Lugat sneers, feigning surprise. He turns his arrogant gaze toward Eugene. Look at you, the eccentric fool. All you know is creating chimeras. Do not forget, you only survived last time because Sir Galadict saved your worthless hide. Eugene shoots him a glare sharp enough to cut glass. Lugat, he whispers, the name dripping with suppressed rage. Lugat smirks, his followers emerging from the shadows to surround them. Did you really want to save him, or did things just move too fast for you? The puzzle pieces click into place. Eugene realizes the horrifying truth. It was Lugat. This bastard is the sole reason for Galadic's ruin in his current wretched state. Lugat admits it with the cold, provocative smile. I arranged this little reunion just for you. I could tell how much you missed your dear friend. And he places a condescending hand on Eugene's shoulder. You really are incredibly rude. Aren't you much worse than the rumors? But Eugene is faster. He seizes Lugat's hand with crushing force and rips the glove right off. Power surges. Serenoa recoils at the strange energy. Eugene realizes instantly that monstrous strength Lugat displayed. It does not belong to him. Serenoa screams a warning. That mark on his hand, it is a seal that allows for the transfer of magical power. It was once used between humans, but became a forbidden taboo. It was outlawed the moment people began leeching power from non-human entities. Lugat laughs, mocking the very concept. Forbidden magic, please. That is just a cowardly term invented by the weak who wish to hoard all the power for themselves. His arrogance swells. We are the chosen ones. We are the only ones who will survive when true despair swallows this world. Eugene sees through the pathetic charade. So, you borrowed someone else's power to defeat Galadict, and then you boasted as if it were your own skill. Eugene's eyes burn with the fires of hell. It is time I taught you your true place. He rushes in with a lightning-fast strike. The forces collide in a thunderous explosion of raw energy. Serenoa trembles as the suffocating pressure descends upon the room. Her mind races in pure disbelief, wondering if a mere vampire could truly unleash such world-shaking energy. Lugat's lips curl into a savage grin of triumph. He chuckles darkly, declaring that concealing his true strength was the masterstroke of this game. Boom! A devastating blow connects. Eugene takes the hit, eyes wide in utter shock, unable to comprehend the sheer force crushing him. Lugat triggers the dungeon's deadliest mechanisms. He makes it clear there will be no mercy, no retreat, and absolutely no holding back. The very ground gives way beneath their feet. Serenoa's scream echoes through the chaos as the floor disintegrates into the abyss. I told you, I control every inch of this maze. Lugat roars over the crumbling destruction. He gazes down with malicious delight, commanding Eugene to perish in the darkness. But Eugene isn't finished yet. He screams Serenoa's name. Instantly, she manifests a barrier, and he uses it as a launch pad. With supernatural velocity, Eugene rockets upward, defying gravity itself to reach his enemy. Crash. Eugene shatters the closing wall and appears directly in front of Lugat. The vampire's arrogance instantly shatters into pure terror. Cold steel hovers inches from death. Eugene points his blade, leaving Lugat paralyzed in stunned silence, barely able to whisper his name. Internal panic sets in. Lugat realizes the rumors were not just true, they were underestimates. This human's power is in a realm of its own. A head-on collision would have meant certain defeat. He realizes that using Gaelic as live bait was the only strategic move that gave him a fighting chance. A twisted, demonic smile creeps back onto Lugat's face as he prepares his final gambit. He announces the grim truth: the final sacrifice is now ready to complete the forbidden ritual. As they plummet, Serenoa desperately casts breaking magic, but she gasps in confusion. Eugene is sprinting in the opposite direction. "Where are you going?" she cries out. The mental and physical pressure reaches its breaking point. Serenoa lets out a raw scream, overwhelmed by the catastrophe unfolding around her. Regret crashes over her like a tidal wave. She berates herself, thinking she should have feigned ignorance and fled to save her own skin. But her conscience was her undoing. Her guilt forced her to intervene, and now she is trapped in this chaotic nightmare. She lifts her head, and time stops. Eugene stands before her, cradling the unconscious body of Gaelic in his arms. "Can you save him?" Eugene asks, his gaze piercing. Serenoa stammers nervously, admitting that healing magic is far from her specialty. Eugene's eyes turn cold as the grave. He cuts her off sternly. Failure is not an acceptable answer. Terrified by his intensity, she sighs helplessly. Standing knee-deep in a pool of ominous red liquid, she agrees to attempt the impossible. Meanwhile, the fairy Miriam flies in, her voice trembling with anxiety as she calls out to her master. "There is no way out," she reports. Eugene scans the perimeter, realizing the walls are indestructible. They are sealed in. The deduction is instant. This isn't just a trap, it's the end of the line. A completely isolated boss room. But Miriam interrupts frantically. "Master, there is something far more urgent you need to know." She points to the crimson sea surrounding them, detecting water energy. She initially believed she could manipulate the tide to their advantage, but her power fails her. This is no ordinary water. It is a dense, pulsating ocean of blood with a nature completely alien to her. Eugene spots stone cubes etched with disturbing eye symbols. It clicks. This is exactly what Serenoa witnessed in the deep underground. Miriam reveals the terrifying truth behind her impotence. Her magic holds dominion only over the blood of the dead. Since she cannot command it, the source of this blood is still alive. Suddenly, the Red Sea erupts. A massive, terrifying entity rises from the depths. Serenoa screams in pure terror, desperately pouring magic into Gaelic, while Eugene stands firm, locking eyes with the abomination. Find an opening now, Eugene commands. Miriam acknowledges instantly, darting away to search for escape. The beast towers over them, a colossal demon crowned with massive horns, radiating malice. Gallic is critical. Retreat is impossible. Eugene steels himself. He must stand his ground against this titan. Energy surges through his blade. He strikes to paralyze. But the monster reacts instantly, firing a barrage of razor-sharp blood projectiles. Eugene is a blur of motion. He weaves through the deadly rain with lightning-fast reflexes. His evasion skills are god tier. He dances through the onslaught, eyes sharp, waiting for that single, perfect split-second to counter. Now Eugene launches a devastating strike, but clang, the blade rebounds off an impenetrable hide. Tush! A sound of annoyance escapes his lips. His attack didn't even pierce the defense. The monster's maw opens wide, a beam of pure destruction fires. Eugene maneuvers mid-air, barely avoiding vaporization, and lands with cat-like grace. This won't be a simple skirmish. He realizes the danger level has spiked as he performs a series of acrobatic evasions to stay alive. He touches down on a precarious stone pillar, the monster's attack shattering the space he just occupied. Eugene stares at his blade, his expression darkening with realization. Ordinary steel is useless against a monster of this caliber. He decides there is no other choice. It is time to unleash his true power. Eugene channels his spiritual energy, coating his blade in a violent crimson aura. With a burst of blinding speed, he launches himself into the air to deliver the death blow. He swings the massive blood-red greatsword down with earth-shattering force. The blade tears through the air and carves a vertical gash right down the beast's torso. But Eugene's triumph is cut short, his teeth grinding together in frustration. He realizes the horrifying truth instantly. That devastating strike was barely a scratch. The wound is laughably superficial. The monster's hide is simply too thick to penetrate. Seizing the opening, the beast retaliates with a crushing blow. Eugene is swatted away like a fly, coughing up a mouthful of blood as the impact rattles his very bones. He slams into the ground with a sickening thud, sliding back as dust rises around his battered form. Nearby, Serenoa pours every ounce of her magic into healing Gelfred. She begs him to wake up, her voice trembling, knowing their friend is fighting a losing battle against death itself. Eugene's heart sinks into a pit of despair. Serenoa was right all along. This isn't just a monster, it is a calamity on a completely different dimension of power. The demonic beast towers over the battlefield, bathed in infernal flames. Before its overwhelming presence, Eugene looks insignificant, like an ant facing a god. Struggling to his feet, Eugene's eyes widen in horror. The beast is targeting Serenoa and Gelfred. He curses his own weakness, desperate to intercept the attack. But the monster intercepts him first, crushing Eugene with a thunderous smash. Serenoa screams his name, her voice cracking with pure, unadulterated terror. Eugene gasps for air, his vision swimming in red as blood masks his face. A cold, suffocating sense of helplessness washes over him. It is a sensation he knows all too well. This is the same despair he endured for decades in his previous life, the bitter taste of weakness. The beast turns its murderous gaze and razor-sharp claws back toward him. Eugene stares back, a bitter question forming in his fading consciousness. As the monster's strikes tear into his flesh, Eugene wonders why this agony feels worse than before. Is it the physical pain, or the sting of failing again? A final blow pierces through him, and Eugene collapses. His gaze drifts downward, the question echoing in the darkness of his mind, why? Suddenly, a miracle occurs. As Serenoa weeps over the broken body in the pool of blood, a finger twitches. Gelfred's eyes snap open. His blue pupils gleam with a mysterious light. He stares in shock at the chaos unfolding before him, an ancient power finally awakening.